Hey everybody, what's going on? Tony from Mr. Tony of the Dead on YouTube. I just wanted to talk a little bit about my channel. If you head on over there on YouTube and subscribe, you can find the latest horror reviews, unboxings, collecting, and many more. I also like to go live and give live reviews and even watch a movie with all my subscribers. Just head on over to YouTube at www.youtube.com/Mr. Tony of the Dead.
Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to the movies!
You're so hypnotizing. Could you be the devil? Could you be an angel? You're so
dysfunctional. Can't do this no more.
on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at 100.
So we start keeping score. You and I go rough.
And I don't care. It's a matter of time before we all run out.
But baby, there you go again, there you go again.
Looking as innocent as possible to get to you. Yes, you make me so nervous, but I'm ready to go. Leave me and you make me glow. But I cover up 'cause everybody knows it was never my intention to brag. Just steal it all away from you now.
Welcome everyone to the first episode of To the Movies. I am one of your co-hosts. My name is Slasher Scotty. So I guess for a little bit of people that don't know about me, I interview celebrity guests, primarily from horror franchises on my other podcast titled Slasher Scotty. I also have a YouTube channel named Slasher Scotty where my interviews can also be heard, as well as original video content. And I am the founder and co-founder of Gravestone. I am the founder and co-owner of Gravestone Films, where we have 3 films under our belts, including Samhain, a YouTube short titled Friday the 13th, Dead Before Dusk, and another film currently in production called 72, which will be out sometime in 2022. I guess I first got started with Friday the 13th. I guess it was originally with Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. I was hooked from the start, and I just decided to watch all of Friday the 13th from the beginning, and I ended up going to Black Diamond, where we ended up, I don't know if Yags, who's our guest co-host today, he members of Black Diamond in Ashland at the video rental store. And I got all of them pretty much from the beginning, except for one. One of them I saw on TV, which I will tell the story when we get to that episode in a couple of weeks or months or whatever. But that's pretty much a background about me and how I got started in Friday the 13th. I will let my other co-hosts, introduce themselves and let us know a little bit about how you got started with Friday the 13th and where how this franchise kind of impacted you. So, Chris, you want to go?
Sure. My name's Chris Rhydings, producer on some horror films, actor in others. People might recognize me most, I guess, from Bloody Summer Camp or the upcoming 72 when that gets going. There's some other films coming out, but those are probably the ones that will be referenced the most in the coming weeks or months at the moment. There are other films by all means, like Massacre Academy, Shriek Show, Christmas Slasher, and some others. Trivial is also putting together, and Heavy Duty Man is going to be crowdfunding soon. Hit list video for all the socials. Yeah, so Friday the 13th, believe my first experience with it was on Joe Bob. That was pretty much my introduction to horror in general, was watching Joe Bob's Monster Vision. So I assume I saw it first there. The original Friday the 13th, I think, is the only one I owned on VHS back in the day, even though I'm going to be honest, it's not my favorite of the franchise, or in the top 3. But overall, I enjoy the franchise. It's actually Friday the 13th is depending on the day, I'd probably say that's probably my favorite slasher franchise is Friday the 13th. But I do like the others. There's give and takes on all of them, but Friday the 13th is good.
Nice. Rowan, what about you?
Sorry, it's still trying to make my camera work out of vanity. I learned about, or I've known all the time about Friday the 13th and, you know, the mask and the stabby stab. But I didn't actually watch it until I started dating Chris, and he got me into horror movies, and they just sort of absorbed into my bloodstream. But most of the times when I watched it, I was really young and kind of not paying attention very much. But I did like some of the technical parts of it, like special effects. Like one of the things that I wasn't really used to as a consumer of media in my generation is basically like seeing practical effects that weren't like, you know, any practical effects at all. You know what I mean? That I always loved things like even just Muppets, anything that was like, oh, this is really cool. And so like I wasn't really into horror, but I did really respect like some of the production and like the drama of it and constructing it and also special effects. So that's where I really got into like horror in general, but also Friday the 13th because it has some very striking special effects in it.
Absolutely. And so Chris, Rowan, and myself, we are the main co-hosts, and every episode we will be having a guest co-host join us, and you might see this guest co-host multiple times through multiple episodes, given on you know, their availability. And our first episode's guest co-host is Scott Yagielniskie, otherwise known as Yags. You want to let us know a little bit about yourself and how you got started in the franchise, Yags?
Sure. Well, first off, Scott Yagielniskie, you already said my name. Everyone just calls me Yags, short nickname for it. The franchise itself for Friday the 13th, I remember being really young, maybe 7, 8 years old. My dad had it recorded on a VHS. And I remember one night, just a random summer night, he was started watching, and it was episode 2 he had, and that was the first one I remember ever watching. And I remember just making fun of the guy because he had a bag on his head. And all I remember is watching that movie, and then I was terrified the rest of the night when I was trying to sleep. I couldn't sleep that night. But one of the surprises, as soon as the movie was over, my dad also, for some reason, on that same VHS, had Rod Stewart's Motown song recorded, the music video for it, on the end of that VHS. So for some reason, every time I think of Friday the 13th, I think of Rod Stewart and his song, the Motown song. But growing up, ever since then, I became a huge fan of the horror genre in general. Anything Friday the 13th, Halloween, and then you go even into the obscure ones and stuff, the real B movies and stuff like that, just anything horror related.
Nice.
Your dad thought you needed a chaser.
That's probably what it was, something to try to make me happy.
You're like, all right, well, if the kid freaked out, maybe Rod Stewart will help out. My words have no comfort.
That's awesome. So thanks guys for joining me. So we are just getting started on episode 1. I will see you back here right when we go into our very first category, which we like to call the Fiend's Fire.
I don't want to scare anyone, but I'm going to give it to you straight about Jason. His body was never recovered from the lake after he drowned. And if you listen to the old-timers in town, they'll tell you he's still out there.
So thanks again for joining us. For those that aren't aware at the Fiend's Fires, let me just give you a little insight on it. So we're basically going to discuss any recent news or any news at all pertaining to Friday the 13th and the franchise as a whole. Going to a little bit about the background of this movie, since this is the first one of the franchise, even though there wasn't a franchise at the time, and kind of go into that. And if we have time, we can go into the musical score as well. So does anybody have any news that you guys got? I know I got a little bit about the lawsuit going on, but I don't know if you guys came up with anything.
I mean, it's a couple, maybe a month or two back. Friday the 13th game servers, they don't really update anymore. The content creators have pretty much put a hold on it, especially once the initial court ruling came out. They pretty much said no new content, new up, but they've done bug bug fixes for about a year or so, and then it kind of just kerplutzed.
Yeah.
I really liked that game for a while. I still probably do. It gets disheartening after a while.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that with the lawsuit, obviously, everyone's familiar with the big lawsuit between Sean S. Cunningham, the director and creator of it, and the screenwriter Victor Miller. And Victor Miller obviously won that lawsuit, and Sean Cunningham ended up appealing it. I don't know if they've actually done anything since then with it. I think it's just kind of sitting in limbo on waiting for a court date or something going on. But
didn't Sean Miller win the international, but Sean won international, but Victor won
I think
in the
so,
US?
yeah. I think so, yeah. And I know that it's a shame because it's been over 10 years now since we got an actual film in the franchise.
It's been closer to 20, I think.
Maybe the last one
The
was in
reboot.
2009.
Yeah, the reboot was 2009, so that's closer to 20.
Yeah, closer to 20 years. That's crazy. I didn't even think it was that long, and that's really insane. And the sad part is that like we're waiting on a new
2009
film.
was 11 years ago.
Yeah, closer to.
No, you're making me feel old. Don't call that 20. Don't call that 20. Now please continue.
Well, the thing is that it's sitting in limbo with where we're at, like with what we're at now. And if we just need at least one more movie, because one more movie, if you count Freddy vs. Jason, will make it the 13th Friday the 13th film. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we need that symbolicness.
I don't know if I need it.
Versus Michael.
I'll be honest, I don't think I need it.
I don't know. I think if they had, I always thought a great like 13th film would be Ginny, like, and all like the original final girls. Now I doubt this will ever happen, but any of all the final girls, the original final girls, and even the final boys, the survivors, came back for one last hurrah with Jason. He killed all of them off one by one, and you have one final girl left. I think that.
Why?
I don't know. I just think it would be so I think it'd be so nostalgic.
It might be nostalgic, but I don't think it makes any sense on a character level. Be like, oh, I escaped this bloody massacre. Let me go back.
Good point.
For shenanigans.
That's a very good point. And yeah, go ahead.
I mean, just be like the PTSD alone. I don't see it.
Especially with Chris Higgins. Remember the end of part 3? We'll be getting into that in about a month or so. But Chris Higgins, like she's probably in a mental hospital for life after dealing with all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the closest you get is what was it? One of the I'm forgetting which fan film it was, where it was basically Jarvis's daughter goes to the campground looking for answers. Was it?
It might be
Vengeance.
Vengeance.
Jarvis.
Yeah, Tommy Jarvis.
Okay.
I believe it's I might be getting my fan films flipped up.
I know that Victor Momore's coming out,
where one of the Tommy Jarvis's daughters is going and looking for him.
Okay, I know Victor No More is incorporating something like that too, but that's not out yet. They're still filming. Yeah,
and that's kind of why I feel like I don't really need a 13th film. There's so many of these fan films,
and a lot of the fan films are a lot better than the studio produced films if you think about it.
I mean, speaking of fan films, Friday the 13th, veteran actors is one of the news articles I found, returns in a fan film here. And I just scrolled down too far. So it says Friday the 13th, actress Adrienne King returns as Alice Hardy in a new Jason Voorhees fan film that sees her take the fight to the Voorhees family. So just a little brief synopsis of it. It says, now a new hour-long fan film, and it's on the Jason Rising YouTube channel, reimagines Alice as having survived the events of part 2.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, she's quite dead.
And has her take the fight directly to the Voorhees family. The film sees a group of U.S. Marshals and police officers on the trail of a trio of escaped convicts, only to discover that they have stumbled onto the grounds of Camp Crystal Lake. Finding themselves the prey of both Jason and undead Pamela Voorhees, they soon discover that their only hope is Alice, who has a vendetta to settle with the Voorhees family.
Interesting. I actually might check that out.
And there's a new one coming out with Tina too.
Yes, Roseblood. I am actually interviewing Laura Park Lincoln on Monday to discuss Roseblood, 13 Fanboy, and of course Part 7. So I'm actually looking forward to that. But yeah, I'm actually very interested in Roseblood to see what's going to happen with that, especially with Tina, of course, returning, but she didn't die. Dr. Cruz is also returning, so I don't know how that's going to play in. So I'm actually really curious.
Yeah, he's a clone. I don't know.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah, that's the ones I'm more interested in. Like, oh, well, Tina lived. Let's continue with Tina. Let's see what happened.
Yeah,
I think that kind of hits the itch you're talking about.
yeah.
And I think the fan films are going to put more time and effort into those characters than a mass-produced, like, New Line Cinema style movie.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And another piece of news actually that I came across, it's another lawsuit for the Friday the 13th franchise. It was as of January 2021, so it's earlier this year, quite a few months ago. But another lawsuit was filed by Sean S. Cunningham, and he is saying that he hasn't received the appropriate net profits from the franchise. And his filing argues that contingent compensation from the Friday the 13th films have been systematically miscounted by Paramount and Warner Brothers and the studios that have distributed them. So,
Well,
yeah.
doesn't that make sense? He doesn't have the rights anymore in the U.S.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know.
It's Victor Miller's money now.
Yeah, so I don't know what is going on with that. I didn't hear. That's the only thing I've actually found on that lawsuit. I haven't really came across any conclusions or if it went anywhere further. I mean, Victor Miller, I mean, like you said, he has the rights to that. So I don't know how that's going to even pan out and what's going to happen. I think Sean is just kind of grasping at straws to kind of milk it for what it's worth at this point. What do you guys think?
I just think it's really funny that like the reason this whole franchise started was because they thought Halloween was so cool. And then and people are eating like the hearts out of dead bodies and going to space, and it's just with the way of the things that people pay attention to, the things that concern Sean S. Cunningham
Exactly.
about his creation. Of all the things, this is, I mean, I feel for him because it was the largest, it was the most money made from an independent film that was like released by predominant like movie distributions. So it has a lot going for it. And the fact that it was just this beautiful fiasco for upwards of 30-40 years now is just kind of amazing. But a part of me is just like, make a different Halloween knockoff. I don't know. Maybe it would work.
Absolutely. And I was talking to Chris yesterday when I was basically telling him about how I was, working on like getting all my notes and everything, and I was doing it for like 4 hours. And this next section of The Fiend's Fire, about the movie background, I was pretty much watching the beginning parts and a lot of like maybe 2 hours or so out of the 8 hours of the Crystal Lake Memory documentary. It's like a very long documentary, but I was kind of taking notes on what they were of pretty much the whole original Friday the 13th part and the beginning part. And here's kind of guys, jump in, raise your hand, or those that aren't on camera, like just jump in. Just let me know like if you want to add any insight to what I'm about to say. But here's kind of like a background of how this film got started. So Sean S. Cunningham, he met Stephen Minassian, I guess is how you pronounce it, and Philip Scuderi when looking for film distribution for a movie he worked on with Wes Craven titled Together. They gave Cunningham money to distribute the film and an extra $50,000 to develop a cheap, low-budget horror film that turned out to be the infamous Last House on the Left, which saw the directorial debut of Wes Craven himself. The Last House on the Left was released in 1972, and it became a financial success. It was in poor taste, and it was like very degrading. I don't know if you saw it, but it was like really promoted sexual violence. Like it was pretty infamous for that time frame, I would guess. But anyways, he also would go on to work with Philip Scuderi, who became a prominent figure with the earlier Friday the 13th film. So he ended up working with him and Steve Miner, and that's how he ended up meeting Victor Miller and musical composer Harry Manfredini, based on working on the movie Manny's Orphans, which is a ripoff or a knockoff, whatever you want to call it, of Bad News Bears. So then eventually Halloween became the smash hit, as Rowan was talking about, in 1978. And Sean wanted to make some money by producing a cheap yet attractive film. So because Halloween was so successful, he tried to think of a holiday that, or some type of date that would just kind of garner a major buzz. Do you know what holiday this was?
No, but I mean, the original, like, that wasn't even the original working title for it. It was like,
It wasn't.
It was A Long Night at Camp Blood was the original working title.
yeah. So I mean, that has nothing to do with the holiday.
I know,
But I
but
mean-
yeah, I am getting into that part. But he wanted to do a major holiday, which I think was Arbor Day. No, it's Friday the 13th.
I mean,
that is what he ended up settling with. And this is how Long Night at Camp Blood became a working title, because he ended up taking an ad out in Variety magazine and put in, "From the people who brought you The Last House on the Left, the scariest movie you've ever seen, or the most terrifying movie you've ever seen," with Friday the 13th right on there. He wanted to see if they can get any traction from it, maybe even see if anybody can even owns the name. And guess what? Someone did own the name Friday the 13th. It was called Friday the 13th, The Orphan. And after I did some research on this, they settled on the name. They said that they, since they owned the name, but they didn't have a script or a plot, but they were waiting for permission from that production studio that made that movie to use the Friday the 13th name. But they haven't heard for a little bit, so they end up settling on the name Long Night at Camp Blood for the title, because they didn't think they could use Friday the 13th. But eventually, the company got back to them and said, "You know what? Go ahead, use the Friday the 13th name." So they end up doing that, and the script then ended up getting written by Victor Miller. And all that stuff. But I guess the first question I want to ask you guys is do you consider really Friday the 13th being a cheap knockoff of Halloween? Can you justify your answers on that? Like, what makes you think that it would be a cheap knockoff of Halloween?
I mean, it's definitely inspired. You could see it throughout the film.
Yeah.
Especially the various POV shots and things like that.
I think it goes from like the POV shots, the way that Halloween pioneered like just watching teenagers doing teenager things, but actual teenager things. Like in the 40s, you had, people going to the sock hop and maybe like making out in cars, but you knew like that's not how teenagers talked, like not even back then, like no
Gee
way.
willikers.
So like Halloween kind of like followed a bunch of normal teens, and then it had a lot of POV shots, and then a lot of them getting murdered. And so like absolutely Friday the 13th. I don't know if they really like refined that, but and it's not a cheap, but a knockoff, absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely see the beginnings of the movie, like alone just is very similar. Like Michael Myers, the POV of killing his sister, and then the POV of Mrs. Voorhees in the beginning of the movie killing Barry and Claudette. So like I could that alone is a very a good imitation of between both movies. I could definitely see the inspiration there. Obviously different settings and everything like that, one suburban area, one a summer camp and all that, but like a lot of the filmmaking style and that is very similar. So I guess Yags, I'll ask you this first. What do you think about this being like Friday the 13th being, I guess, the first slasher movie, or do you think there was ones before that? Because I seen, actually the reason why I asked this is because I seen a bunch like on a forum somewhere when I was doing some research about this question, that people are saying that Friday the 13th is the first slasher movie but then other people are saying no, it was Halloween, but then other people are saying no, it's Psycho. So, and then other people are saying Texas Chainsaw. So there's so many. So where do you think this is the first slasher movie, or what do you think is the first to start the slasher movie craze?
Personally, well, before I answer that question, I also want to say, to go back to the previous question about Halloween kind of influencing Friday the 13th. There's actually another film as well that influenced the ending of Friday the 13th.
Oh, yeah.
That's Carrie.
Yeah, with the whole pop up.
Yeah.
Oh God,
I mean,
I got
honestly,
a whole section for that part.
Yeah, Rowan and I both hate that.
Long story short, Victor gets whatever money he deserves from Sean Cunningham for that ending. And
no,
also,
that was Tom Savini.
I know, but no, Tom Savini might have suggested it, but he's not the director. It's not his call.
Yeah.
He can thank Tom Savini and not Victor Miller for why. Anyway, never mind.
But to answer your question about what I think is the first slasher film, I would have to go with Psycho. I would say that it's the first one where you actually have someone that is actually gaining like a body count. And to me, a body count is what is going to consider it being a slasher film. So, I mean, like you said, a lot of people will say Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I do think it would be, in my eyes at least, is Psycho. And that's the one that kind of started the genre of these films.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you guys think, Chris, Rowan? Where do your thoughts land on what was the first slasher movie?
Well, I think I partially agree with our guest host. I see Psycho as, I guess, the golden age of horror, and I would say it's probably the first slasher of that time period. But I would say the more modern take, what we immediately think slasher film, you do probably think Jason, Michael, what have you, and that would be Michael Myers, because Halloween was before Texas Chainsaw, Friday the 13th, and all that.
Yeah,
where we have a couple, was it 20 years, about when was Halloween made? Halloween was
78.
What?
78.
78. So you have about 17, 18 years from when Psycho was made to then. And it's considered the golden age of cinema ends at the 1960s.
Right.
So
now,
that's why I would say I think Psycho is, yes, the originator, but it's more the golden age.
Right. Wasn't Texas Chainsaw out before Halloween? Can't remember the date on that one.
Well, Google can
The thing about Texas Chainsaw is that it's surprisingly bloodless.
Yeah.
So, like, it's one of those movies where I don't even know if it really counts as a slasher, almost more like an exploitation film.
Yeah.
That's really not even that, but has all of the mood and the tropes of it.
Yeah.
74 Texas Chainsaw Massacre
74.
came out.
Okay, yeah. So I personally think I agree with Chris. Like Psycho and Halloween, kind of what is where I go. What about you, Rowan?
So you guys bring up a lot of good points. Like, I want to go with Scott's, like what Scott said about Psycho. But the thing about Psycho is, like, it's got a lot there, but it's also too much of like the 50s, 60s, kind of 40s stuff where there's like a killer, they're stalking, there's a big reveal at the end, you know, but it's so well made and like is just so iconic that I could definitely see like that, why that would be chosen. But I'm going to go more with Halloween. More like because when I think of a slasher, I just think of a dude in a mask.
Yeah,
like,
I don't
just
think
can't help
Leatherface.
It's the one thing that happened like that, because I grew up on a lot of MST3K as a kid. So I watched a lot of like people making fun of goofy movies, but those movies were really violent. Like they had a lot of like killers and stalkers and creepers in those movies. But the guys never really had a mask. And they usually had like some sort of like, you know, arguably offensive like mental disability portrayal to justify all of the gross shit that they were doing.
Right.
But I think I have to go with Halloween because there's a mask, and it also did a lot of POV shots that, you know, Psycho had some in, but it's got that mood. It established the mood, in my opinion.
Definitely. So obviously Victor Miller wrote the script for this film, and it was kind of his launching pad to you know, bigger and better things, so to speak, doing, you know, Guiding Light, All My Children as the prominent head writer for both of those you know, both of those soap operas. And then after he turned in the script, the investors that were releasing the film under the name Georgetown Productions they kind of had reservations about the script. So they ended up writing Ron Kurz to pen some edits to the final draft of the and he was not credited for this work at all. He would be brought back though in a credited role for part 2 of Friday the 13th to write that film, to write that script. But he ended up making some changes and everything, and then he ended up coming, and then they ended up using that for the Friday the 13th film, and then so then they end up beginning location scouting and casting. So for location, they settled on Camp Novi Bosco, which is in Blairstown, New Jersey, an actual Boy Scout summer camp, and they filmed a lot of the downtown scenes in the beginning of the movie in that part of the area as well. And then for casting, two up and coming actors. They were kind of famous at the time. Kevin Bacon, he had a small but effective role in Animal House, which was 1978.
He was also doing soaps at that time, wasn't he?
I think he might have been. I don't know if he did it before or after Friday the 13th, but it was definitely around that time.
My understanding, Cunningham picked him for the role because him and two of the other counselors, so all the three, the kind of the love triangle, I guess.
Yeah.
The three of them were already, I believe, doing soaps together.
Okay.
And then that's like, he was like, oh, they already have a natural chemistry.
That makes a lot of sense too. And then of course we have Harry Crosby, who played Bill. I don't think was really known for much at the time, except for being the son of the musician Bing Crosby.
Rowan, your mic is off.
I'm sorry that I didn't know you were talking to me.
Well, I know you had something you wanted to say about Crosby.
Oh, well, I just like Bill, but I was saving that because I know we were going to ask about what our favorite characters.
Oh, never mind. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I was like, oh no, her mic turned off.
I don't know why, I don't know how he got on the set though. I don't know if he auditioned or if they liked him. I do know that the guy who owns, what's the name of the guy who owns the camp?
Steve
Christie.
Yes, Christie.
Yeah,
I'm
Steve
a friend
Christie.
of the Christies. So he was just a guy who just was on set and was like dating one of the cast or crew and was just hoping to get cast, and he basically did get cast as the Steve Christie because he was working his ass off at that camp on the shop, and I just love that so much.
That's funny because I know they wanted somebody more experienced or more prominent in that role as Steve Christie, and they end up settling with somebody that wasn't really known at the time because his girlfriend, I guess, either put a recommendation or whatever she did, and plus him working at the camp, really that got him the role. But I know Sean Cunningham actually wanted to have somebody more known for that role, and obviously that didn't happen, which is pretty funny actually how that all came about.
Yeah, that's the same thing that happened for Adrienne King for the role of Alice.
Yeah,
Cunningham was looking for some bigger name, and then Cunningham realized, well, that's going to cost a lot of money, so maybe fresh talent instead.
Yeah, I know that I think they offered Sally Field the part.
Yeah, they offered Sally Field the role, and she turned it down. And then when they turned it down, they settled on King.
Nice. Yeah, and when we get more into the characters, we'll like really dissect a lot of the characters. I know maybe the very minor ones will be a very quick breeze through, but I know with Mrs. Voorhees, Sean wanted somebody that was more seasoned, like a veteran for that part. He auditioned a number of actresses. One of them was Academy Award winner Estelle Parson, known for Roseanne, and she also won Best Supporting Actress in 1968 film Bonnie and Clyde. Obviously, Roseanne wasn't happening at the time, but I know her from Roseanne. So Estelle Parson was one of them, but she turned it down because it was too violent and bloody and gory, and she didn't want to do something like that. But Betsy Palmer eventually took the part, obviously she did it for obvious reasons. We'll get into that in a little bit. She ended up taking the part, and I think she did good for what she had. Obviously and I'll be talking about this more when we get into characters that I wish she kind of was on screen more to kind of give a clue on who the hell she was.
Yeah, that's the biggest grief I have at this movie, why I don't like it so much.
Yep. And then a majority of the other
I like it, but not compared to like the rest of the franchise as much.
Absolutely. I completely agree. So and the rest of the cast, they were all pretty much Broadway actors and actresses that were brought in because Sean Cunningham said he wanted his counselors to look like clean-cut kids that would be in a Pepsi commercial. So that's pretty much what he did there. Let me see. So with the catchy title of Friday the 13th, Cunningham knew that he needed to hook the audience and to make this film more memorable, which means that we need to have good death scenes, good special effects. So who better to get than Tom Savini, who was known at the time for his special innovative makeup effects work for George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. And with a tight budget and a small shooting schedule, this film was actually done in 1 month. September 4th through October 3rd, 1979, from what I found online, like a month to film this movie, and that's quite interesting, actually. Paramount would eventually take a chance on distributing the film domestically while Warner Brothers released it internationally, and then it was released in the theaters May 9th, 1980. It grossed roughly $40 million domestically on a $500,000 budget, which is amazing to know that it made it literally like.
The distributors thought it was low risk anyways.
Right.
It cost thousands
Domestically,
of dollars.
it wouldn't make that kind of money again until the crossover with Freddy Krueger.
Yeah. It's crazy. So,
but all the films, I believe, were profitable compared to their budget.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's
not
it's
as
amazing.
much as the first one, though.
Oh no, definitely not to the first one.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
got your shock value in the first one.
The first one grossed 600 million just on opening weekend, or not 600, sorry, 6 million on opening weekend.
That's crazy.
So I mean, that's still a great profit for 500,000.
Exactly, and if you can imagine, like and that's why they obviously made these movies. Like they made these movies because you could make them on peanuts and end up making all of it back and maybe more than 10 times of what.
Why do you think we have so many Paranormal Activity movies?
Exactly. Exactly. It's insane. So this movie obviously was released in 1980. I have a question for all three of you. Let me see what you think about this. So obviously it was filmed in 1979, so 70s. It was released in 1980, the start of the 80s. So I guess despite what there being other movies like, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Psycho, all that out there, but do you consider this a 70s or an 80s movie?
You know what, it is set. It actually takes place on Friday, June 13th, 1979. That's when the movie takes place.
Yep.
And funny fact about that, it's actually a Wednesday. It was not a Friday, June 13th, 1979.
And the funny thing is that
it's marketable.
Yep, Friday the 13th, June of 1980 was actually a real Friday the 13th, though. So why didn't they just wait a month to release it then?
I don't know. I honestly couldn't answer that. They should have. They should have. But they actually, so they flubbed their, whatever you want to say, flubbed the dates around to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
I would say because of when it's set, I would say it's a 70s movie. Just because the filming was done in the 70s, even though it came out in the 80s.
I agree. What about you, Rowan?
Your mic's off.
Damn it. Okay. So the thing is that it's really a 70s movie. And the reason is the score. It's the score and also, the hairdos. Come on, this is 70s. I mean, the feathered back hair, the score that's very noticeably absent of any synth music. Like, not to say that the 70s didn't have any movies with synth music, but it just has more of that vibe, like with the fashion and the mannerisms and that cop that shows up. It just all screams 70s to me.
What about you, Chris?
I think I'm going to break parody. I initially think 80s, just because that's when it's released. That's when it came out.
Yeah.
It was filmed in 79. I agree with this, but I don't initially think of it as a 70s movie like I do like Phantasm, which is 1979.
Right.
So I like Phantasm, I think 70s movie.
Right.
Um,
And I'll even go one further, like with Halloween, it was released in 78. For whatever reason, I believe that as an eight, when I say 80s films, I'll include Halloween as 80s films, even though it was released in 78. Like I say, I just say it because like I guess literally all the sequels up to like I think it was like Resurrection or oh no, H2O as well is like, is all in the 80s. Like, I kind of like just group them all in the 80s together. I don't know why, but I do.
You're
It's not
drunk,
the
go home.
eight. You don't get into 80s movies yet until like, I don't know, People Under the Stairs or like other
Right.
that's a good one.
like when you go from like just straight up rape and body horror and also into Reaganomics, that's when it becomes like a real 80s movie in my brain. Like with what Chris said with Phantasm, like I agree that feels like a 70s movie. It was made in 79, just like
Yep.
this movie. And I feel like if you transplanted the characters for whatever reason to satisfy the plot, it would feel seamless.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Like you could say that the film is 1979 in the timeline, and I think it flows just as well as 79 or 80. Just when I think when the movie came out is when I think it is in that time block. Like when you go, I don't go backwards in this respect. You like when I think when was Back to the Future made? Well, I don't look at when it was in production. I look to when it was released.
Right. Yeah, and even with and it's funny the timeline, like as the months go on, as we film, these episodes for Friday the 13th franchise, the timeline gets very complicated. Very complicated. We will be going into that category very shortly. One last thing I do want to discuss though is the musical score. Obviously we have the famous a lot of people think it's
No, it's abbreviation of kill mama or kill mommy.
Yep, kill her mommy. He took the consonants of kill and the KI in kill and the consonants of MO or MA, I guess you could say.
And I think it's mom.
Yeah. So he ended up using that and it's kill ma. And I interviewed Harry Manfredini and I actually looked back at my interview with him to kind of get the brief idea. So because it was like I didn't want to like steal other people's work, so to speak, of their interviews with them. So I ended up going to mine. But I end up reading the interview and he said that he actually created this to let the audience know that the killer was actually present. And
the only time you really have the music is when Pamela Voorhees is there.
Right.
You have these awkward long silences in this film.
Yeah.
There's no music, but that's because the tension of the music is supposed to be kind of like Jaws. You only get the music when the creature is on screen. In this case, it's POV Jaws, but yeah,
exactly. And then he ended up putting he put like the KI and the MO into the microphone. He spoke it with like a dramatic accent. He repeated the sound, and it created the voice that we're all familiar with, that sound effect that we're familiar with that is used in all the films. And obviously we'll get into the part, I think it was it Rowan and Chris that wanted to really talk about. We'll first talk about the score and then we'll go into that part of the movie. The end with Alice in the canoe. First, the score was used to fool everyone into thinking the nightmare was over, but then the huge reaction with the final jump scare of Jason jumping out of the water and dragging Alice down into the lake, which that was he ended up doing that to kind of to make everybody like, the panic is over, and then bam, he gets you right there, the last minute jump scare, which is obviously a ripoff of Carrie. So I'll kind of leave it over to Chris and Rowan, who really have a lot of notes on this that I want them to.
I don't say I have a lot of notes. I just
I say something about the score real quick?
Yeah, sure.
I was doing some research just on the score itself, and I didn't know he only had 3 weeks to actually make the score.
Oh wow, I didn't know
I was
that
doing it. So I saw that he had 3 weeks to make the score, and what you just said, using it only when the presence of someone was on the screen that we can't see. When you heard the mama part, that is known as a leitmotif, like a leitmotif.
Okay.
And that literally is used in opera, and it denotes a recurrent passage of music associated with a specific person, and that's where he got that idea to use that from. And then, as you said, you don't see the killer until the actual 9th reel in the film, but they wanted to introduce the killer. So every time you heard that music, you knew the killer was there somewhere.
Right.
And then going back to the killer, he actually used his own voice to record the words killer and mommy. And then he processed through it through filters multiple times until you got to the actual mama part where you would hear. And then you have the orchestral swell for the frame for the boat scene. And now I will let them talk about their favorite scene in the movie.
It's not nowhere near close. Honestly, I think if it would have been left as a dream sequence, kind of like how you see it in Carrie, being a bit more of a ripoff, but then it's fine. It's a decent jump scare, but I just don't see the point. It just breaks the disbelief for me, because we've just now had Pamela Voorhees going around killing people. And if we're to believe that Pamela Voorhees was making the little kill mommy yelling out in the woods, then there's I just don't see the point, other than you wanted to do it. Especially when in part 2, Jason's an adult. It's not little kid Jason running from the lake.
Yep.
We aged Jason at least 15 years. So, I mean, did he eat some Miracle Grow in a little while? Or I just, it throws the whole thing off for me. And I really think it could have been left as a dream sequence. Or completely out of the script. Like Victor Miller didn't have it in the script. It was added by Tom Savini.
The part I really hated is because there's so many parts of it that are so good. The boy, the special effects on the boy when he's coming out of the water, amazing. Adrian King's last line, where he's like, but then he's still there. Amazing line.
Oh yes, great delivery.
Yes. The fact that there is one kill where a girl's just minding her own business, sitting in bed reading, which I'll get into this in a minute, but but then she hears a voice and someone being, help me. And it is very much sounds like an actual child, not like Betsy Palmer doing a killer, mommy killer kind of voice, but it sounds like an actual child out in the rain. And I think that would have been good to have a ghost boy being around, an agitated ghost. There was just something compelling, but the way that it was all put together and the fact that it was all these beautiful pieces and it was put together in that way just kind of is ugh. And that's all.
Yeah, Rowan's more elegant than I. That's a better way to describe it than I did.
Exactly. So I guess that wraps up the Fiend's Fire. So
wait a minute. What do you guys think
something
about Rowan and I's comment?
I wanted to also say something about the music. Because Scott brought up such good points about how he only had 3 weeks to do it. But I also want to talk about the guy who inspired him. His name is, I'm going to butcher this. He's Polish, but his name is Krzysztof Penderecki.
Okay.
And he's done lots of musical scores, actually, for Shutter Island and The Shining. And he got notoriety through a song called the Threnody to the Victims of Hiroshima. And when you hear it, it's just strings screaming at you. It's nice. Very, very shining, very good music. But that's where Manfredini got the inspiration for this score, especially the strings going and stuff like that. That comes from Penderecki. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Nice. I have a question for you guys. And I know Chris really hates this, and I want to kind of get more in detail with all of you guys about this as well. Give our opinions on it. Obviously, we know who the killer is if you've seen the movie now. Mrs. Voorhees. you don't see her at all until like the very end of the movie for the most part, like, and it's at this point that it's like, okay, so she's the killer because who's left? There's no one left. Like, I mean, I guess you could say Crazy Ralph to an extent. I will get into him in the character portion on how he was going to be a false lead, but I didn't expect it because you haven't seen Crazy Ralph in like over an hour in the movie.
There's also the cop that shows up.
That's true too.
I said, sit on it, Tonto.
Yeah,
That's
Cop
true,
that
yeah.
just shows up and goes away, much like Crazy Ralph, actually.
yeah, and you have that scene with Nettie where after he's macheted the snake, they hang the camera on him.
Bill, you mean, yeah.
And with when he's holding the machete, so it's kind of like, ooh, is it him?
Right. Yeah. And that's what that was one where I was going with it. Like in the whole mystery thing. And then Mrs. Voorhees shows up and I'm thinking, well, she's the killer at this point. Like, I mean, I never thought of Officer Dorf as a threat, but I did think of Crazy Ralph as like, people are going to believe me that this camp is cursed type of thing. He's crazy. Crazy Ralph is in his name. It's his title. But like, so I kind of expected that. To an extent, but when I seen Mrs. Voorhees, I immediately knew she was the killer, and the main reason is because we haven't seen her before. So why is she randomly showing up at the camp where everybody's getting killed? Like, she has to be the killer. Like, that's just kind of where my mind went. I personally think, and then I'll get into your guys' thoughts, is that I think that they should have had her stationed throughout. They could have easily filmed it very simply, on the same day, Betsy Palmer was on set. Have her in the diner, just drinking a coffee or something, at the diner, even in the beginning of the movie when Annie was there, like have her just like just sitting in a booth or whatever, reading a newspaper, even just kind of red herrings like throughout the film. Maybe have her show up on the camp or like be a hitchhiker, like, I need to hitch a ride or something, Enos is driving the truck, kind of like, can you give me a hitch? Like, just give red herrings like you've seen this girl throughout the movie or something. Can we know, like, actually know she's part of this community? But then when she just randomly shows up, it's like, who are you? And then she kind of explains it, but then you're like, once you first see her, you're like, something's up with this lady, like she's got to be the killer. What do you guys think?
I mean, if it was like you're saying, even in like the diner, if she could have been like a waitress or something,
yeah,
could have been talking to them or something like that.
Yeah, that would have been something at least.
I think that would have been subtle enough that you saw the character, she said some words, you knew who she was, and then she shows up because she has the motive to actually want to kill the counselors. I think they could have done something like that, and I think that might have been, I think simple enough that it might have made sense. Right. But like you said, coming back at it, the fact that she's the killer in the first one, it almost, did they know they were going to continue this franchise for 12 films?
I don't think so.
At it, or so like they could have. I mean, I could see this franchise honestly being this one movie, and ending at the end, especially if you get rid of that boat scene with Jason coming out of the water. I could see it, that's where it could end. I really could see her just floating out in the boat waiting for the cops to come.
Right.
So I mean, I think they milked it for all it was worth.
Right.
And because of that, it kind of, you kind of lose interest in it in a little bit.
Yeah. Here's another thought I had, like, that just came to me. Like, what happened? Like, how she was the cook at the camp? Like, what was it, 2 decades or whatever before when Jason drowned? Why couldn't she have been the cook at the diner? And Annie came in saying about, how far is it to Camp Crystal Lake? And they go, they're opening that place again. How far is it, Enos? She could have been the cook at that diner and overheard that they're reopening it. That gave her the motive to now find out the camp is being opened. Now I can go and kill these people to stop it from opening.
Or she could have already known and just be playing the crowd in front of her.
Right, exactly.
No, she knows. Yeah. She keeps an eye on the Christie family and all that stuff. All that same dialogue can be there.
Yeah.
But for the people that's around her, she'd be like, oh, that place? Ah.
Yeah.
But yeah, a murder mystery where you don't introduce the character that's the murderer until everyone's like at the very end.
Yeah.
That feels disingenuous to me.
Honestly, I can kind of forgive it.
Oh, like, that's not how you were saying it the other night.
Well, like, I have a lot of frustrations with this movie, but the thing about but people showing up randomly to the camp and then they start to die could also work, because then you don't know if it's the randos. Hell, it might even be a camp counselor at that point. You could really F with people, and then having her show up at the end doesn't feel as weird, especially if she turns out to be the killer. So that's how I would do it.
Yeah, and I know that like Scream does it really well, because obviously you see all the characters and you know one of the main characters are going to be really the killer at this point. The only one I really can't get behind, I mean, I thought it was a shock, but was Scream, I guess, 2, because you see Mickey in like the, in the 1, but then you don't see him for like, an hour after, because he's doing all the killings, obviously. So like he's kind of just shows up randomly, and and then he's the killer. So I remember when I first got that reveal, I kind of forgot about him, and I was like, who is he again? And then the second time I watched it through, I remembered who he was, because I seen him throughout the movie. But I mean, I don't know. Like,
also had a Scream 2 had also had a female killer too, wasn't
it did. That was another Roseanne reference we'll be making. Wow, we're making more Roseanne references on Friday.
That's what I was trying to lead you there.
Yeah, Laurie Metcalf played Aunt Jackie, and her mother Estelle Parsons, well, not real life mother, but you know what I mean, mother in Roseanne. She was supposed to be the original Mrs. Voorhees, one of them actually. But yeah, I mean.
Here's another thing which is good, is like another reason why now, maybe not when I was watching it, but now I don't mind so much that like she just shows up at the end, is because they have all of this like they have the soundtrack that says Kiki Mama, but that's about all you get in terms of foreshadowing about why the killer's killing and who the killer is.
Yeah.
So I just think like there's no real graceful way in the way that they like built it up. And I think if you just had her be like a waitress or whatever at the beginning looking furtive, I think you would have been like, oh, well then that's the lady that's mad. I bet she's mad about something. It really wouldn't solve the problem is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I know I'll be getting into it. I believe it's in category 4, maybe, I don't know, but there's one of them that in the original draft of the script, you were supposed to know that the killer was nearby, because she was going to be missing a pinky finger, because in her when she was killing Barry, a year after Jason died in the beginning, he was going to actually put up a fight against her, and he was going to end up severing her pinky finger, and that was going to be an indication that every time you see this killer, she's going to miss a finger, but they couldn't do it because of budgetary reasons. I thought that was an interesting piece of tidbits. But does anybody else got anything for the background of the movie, or should we move on? Good. All right. So we will see you back here when we go to time and go into space.
Did Christie tell you about the 2 kids murdered in 58? Huh? Boy drowning in 57? A bunch of fires? Nobody knows who did any of them. In 1962, they was going to open up. The water was bad.
That's right. We are here for Time and Space, and we are about to dissect the very complicated timeline of Friday the 13th. But we're starting with the first movie, so it's not nearly as complicated, but it will get very complicated as we get into later films. That's gonna be that's something. But what do you guys have for the timeline? I mean, pretty much all the dates are really on the screen at this point.
Well, it's supposed to be present day.
Yes.
So it's 2021.
Yep.
It's present day. It told you.
No, the start of it is they're at a camp, and there's a creepy shot of someone walking through a cabin full of sleeping children, and then you cut to a bunch of counselors singing Kumbaya and some stuff. It's very voyeuristic, and then watches a couple go off, and it's a very weird mix of like voyeuristic shots, but also just like, like just regular, I guess, third person shots. I don't know what you would call it. Like they're not meant to be voyeuristic. They're just meant to shoot it. But the way that the camera moves as they're moving down with people, it just made me feel like a porno. Like when I think should have staged that shot a little better to make it feel like know immediately if it's a voyeurism shot or if it's like
these camp counselors, they're singing these like Christian type of songs or whatever, like these hymns or whatever, and it, like for some reason they end up like, I don't want to sing hymnals anymore, so I'm gonna go and have sex, you know. And obviously that's their downfall at this point.
Nobody minds. They just leave and nobody stops them.
And they just keep singing while these two just sneak off and, you know, have romances and all that. So that year was in, from my research, and it wasn't confirmed. I don't think it was confirmed. It might have had the month. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I actually seen it online, July of 1958, if I'm not mistaken. Jason obviously drowned in 1957 in Camp Crystal Lake, and a year later, Barry and Claudette were killed because apparently they were the two that were supposed to watch Jason a year before and ended up being obviously making love like they are now. And this is where Mrs. Voorhees comes a year later to kill them because they basically caused Jason to die. And for those that are listening to this, it's not video, I'm air quoting die. Present day, go ahead. Oh, I thought you were going to say something, Chris.
No, I'm good.
Okay. So present day is set on Friday the 13th, June 1979. The year is never disclosed until Friday the 13th, part 4, the final chapter. I don't know if you knew that. Remember when the people are driving, the group of kids are driving, and they see the Mrs. Voorhees headstone, and her first name is revealed for the first time as Pamela, and it has her birth and her date of death, and it says 1979, and the date is June 13th, which is interesting. Which is also Jason's birthday, so that's pretty clever. So, does anybody else have anything on the timeline, or? I know that was pretty short. So it's
the first movie, so
yeah,
it doesn't really get that that jacked up until much.
Yeah, I think
a little bit later.
It starts getting confusing, starting like probably even as of the next movie, it really starts delivering some dates, and then it really goes from there. So next category, we're gonna have a little bit of fun and go into and have a bloodbath. I'll see you at the bloodbath.
Hi, this is Blaster Rob. Do you like video games, horror games, fun chats, and a chill community to hang out with? Then check out twitch.tv/BlasterRob. This is Blaster Rob, and you're listening to the Movies.
I don't believe you. You people give me the creeps.
Hey, where do you think you're going?
I'm going back to bed. You want to come?
Melissa, just stay here with us.
It's not my style.
Don't go out there!
Fuck you. No, fuck you both!
All right, here we are. Category number 3. We're at a bloodbath. We're about to do some trivia questions. I have 10 true and false questions. And for you listening at home, try to play along, see if you know the answers or not. I think this will be fun. So let's set up our little trivia music. Ding. There we go. All right, so number 1. Did Betsy Palmer only do the film to buy a new house? True or false?
False.
False. It was for a new car.
Needed a car. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, well, I figured we had to say our answers.
Yes,
Scotty says something, not we answer and explain why our answer.
Yes, let's do that.
Or is that what we're supposed to do? One at a time?
Yeah, let's do one at a time. I should have.
Okay.
Yeah, should have did that. Yes, one at a time. I'll call on you and we'll answer it. Yes.
Best
All
game
right.
show host ever.
Like, whoa! Too many voices.
Yes. Okay. 2. Tom Savini was recruited for Friday the 13th due to his work on Night of the Living Dead. Chris.
False.
Rowan.
True.
Yags.
False.
It is false. It was his work on Dawn of the Dead. Yes. Was a real animal killed on set? True or false? Chris?
True.
Rowan?
True.
Yags.
Unfortunately, it is true.
It is true. Unfortunately, a snake was killed on the set and on screen while filming in the cabin. 4.
And the guy didn't know that they were going to do that.
Yes.
Yes. I'll get to that when we say about people we hate.
So 4. Betsy Palmer was the original choice to play Mrs. Voorhees. True or false? Chris?
False.
Rowan?
False.
Yags?
False.
Yags, how many people were offered the part before Mrs. Betsy Palmer?
Oh, that's a great question, Scotty. That's a great question. And if I knew the answer, I would tell you.
It's like, that is not a true or false
If I-
question,
I just thought I was
setting him up.
I mean, if I'm gonna guess, I'm gonna say 2, but I don't.
It was
actually-
2.
Oh,
It was
let's go.
The first was offered to Shelley Winters, and then it was to Estelle Parsons. And after Estelle said no, they got Betsy Palmer. And when we get into Betsy
Oh
Palmer,
no, they also wanted Sally Fields.
no,
That
she
was
was
Alice.
Adrian King.
Oh.
I mean Alice, yeah.
Scotty,
Yeah.
are you keeping points to see who wins?
I should, right? I'll do that next episode. I'll have to keep points.
Well, that's not fair if I'm not on next episode.
That's what I was saying.
It's only
5.
fair if we can grade Scotty too at the end of it.
There you go. Maybe one of you can have a set of questions just for me next episode. 5. Noel Cunningham, who was the son of Sean S. Cunningham, was originally going to be Jason Voorhees. True or false? Chris?
False.
Rowan?
True.
Yags?
Oh man, this is a tough one. We'll go with true.
It was true.
Let's go.
But his mom wouldn't let him do it because the water was too gross and cold. So he would not let him do it, and he mentions it in the Crystal Lake Memories documentary. So number 6, Jason Voorhees drowned in Camp Crystal Lake in 1957. True or false? Chris?
Sounds good enough. True.
Rowan?
This is a trick question because, well, he did drown. I don't care what nanobots did. He did drown in a lake in 1957.
Okay, Yags?
True.
It is true. He was supposed to be watched by Barry and Claudette, who were both killed by Mrs. Voorhees a year later in 58. 7. Mrs. Voorhees was originally going to have no pinky finger. True or false? Chris?
True.
Rowan?
True.
Yags?
That's true.
It is. I mentioned it earlier. I forgot I had that as a question, but it is true. She was going to lose a pinky finger when attempting to kill Barry, and this would be used to show that the same killer is at the camp in present day. 8. Alice Hardy was studying to be a school teacher. True or false? Chris?
True.
Rowan?
Sure.
Yags?
I'm going with false.
It is false. She was studying to be an artist and does sketches at the camp in her spare time. Remember how she was so that Steve Christie was so creepy?
Oh, I have to hate on that scene when it comes up.
Sounds good. I can't wait
It
to
makes
hear
no
it.
sense, and it doesn't fucking go anywhere in the
Annie was
Alright,
the one
wait
that
till
was
this
going to be a
game- the
teacher,
game is-
correct?
What was that, Yags?
Annie was the one that was going to be a teacher.
She's like, I have so many dreams.
Yeah, she has so many dreams. As a cook, teacher, everything. Yep. 9. Ron Milkey, who played Officer Dorff, has never ridden a motorcycle before. True or false? Chris?
I don't remember who that is. So false.
He's the officer that says Tonto.
Oh, he rode a motorcycle in the movie. True.
But in real life, did he ever ride a motorcycle?
That is real life. He's doing it.
Do you think he did it for the first time
Yes.
ever for this movie, Chris?
I was like, yeah, he did it in real life. It wasn't CGI.
Chris, answer the question.
I will say false because it looked awkward.
Rowan?
I'm gonna go with true because that's the only reason why they would film him like peeling out for 30 friggin' seconds. And
That was a long cut. Like you
Yikes.
should have.
I mean, I know during filming the motorcycle fell on him.
Oh, that might be why it was awkward.
So I don't know. I'm gonna go with false.
It is true, which is why he is a bit shaky when riding the motorcycle after he was done speaking with the counselors.
That was
So,
the
like,
first time.
that makes even that makes even more less sense about why
It was the first time.
why
because
they
he
had
drove
that in
awkward.
the scene.
They did it
Why
in the
did-
scene. They did it in the scene because he didn't know how to ride it, and they filmed it, and they thought it was awkward and funny and like a gag, and they kept it in.
That's what I meant to
How
say.
about
Is that I
that?
thought it was we had.
Yep.
I said the wrong thing too, but I'm stupid, so it is what it is.
Number 10, the last one. Crazy Ralph actor Walt Gorney practices method acting frequently. Chris.
True.
Rowan.
True. I need to believe this.
Yags.
It's got to be true.
It is false. He is a
Oh.
character actor and stayed in character during the duration of filming, per the Crystal Lake Memories documentary. Yep.
Some
who
petty
was it?
questions, Scotty.
I know. So that is the game show. We have round that up. So I will give all of you a gold ribbon.
Yay!
So next category is going to be probably our longest between that one and the last one, and it is our cast chat. So see you there.
What do you need? Where do you need it?
We got 10 of them users in the barn.
What's wrong with him?
He's dead. Yeah, they're all dead. You can pull it up over there. All dead. Some emergency. Put her over there.
All right, so we're about to talk about the cast that were involved with Friday the 13th. So why don't we start it off with Betsy Palmer as Mrs. Voorhees? I guess the first thing I will mention is that she unfortunately passed away on May 29th, 2015. She was 88 years old. Before I give even any of my information, does anybody have anything they want to talk about Betsy Palmer or the character of Mrs. Voorhees?
I want to talk about how she straight up cold clock Adrian King.
Yeah.
That like because she's like in the theater. We do not fake slap.
Oh
We
my
real
god.
slap. And then Adrian King, after she got called, she was like, Sean! And then like Sean had to explain
Oh my god. And
to
this
Don't
Betsy
hit people
Palmer
in the movie.
that we do not hit people in movies.
Right. And Betsy Palmer in Crystal Lake Memories, I don't know if she was just reenacting the story in like a character type of way or she was literally mocking it. But when she's talking about it, she's like, well, in the theater, we actually hit people. No, we're going to put that in post-production. And she's like, Sean, she hit me, Sean. She's like mocking her. Like,
Oh, like you wouldn't do that. If someone did.
Right.
Someone on set didn't just like straight up slap you in your face.
Yep. Here's one thing I got about Mrs. Voorhees and Betsy Palmer, both of them together, is that when she got decapitated, that's how she obviously got killed by Alice. She got decapitated with the machete. She when her hands were in the air, grabbing for the air and that. Actually, I got 2 points on that. The first part is I researched it, and that would never happen. Her hands would actually never grab up like that because her brain is gone, is dead. Like I don't know, I forget exactly what they said would happen, but either way, like she would not be grabbing for nothing. Like, and another thing was she has hair on her knuckles. And that was because Tazo Stavrakis, if I pronounced that right, he is Tom Savini's assistant for special effects, and he had the severed head on him, and he was and they held it with toothpicks, and when they decapitated her, and she's grabbing for the air, you could see her hairy knuckles. And in Crystal Lake Memories, Betsy Palmer was saying that I don't have hair on my knuckles, I'm a woman, and going all about that. And she's talking about how they said, do you want to see how you die? Do you? And she's like, I don't care less how I die. She's going. She really didn't like this movie, and I know she said that this movie it was a piece of shit, and
Yeah,
she literally.
She's paid for 10 days. Like I don't see 10. Like she's only in.
You know how much she was paid for 10 days? Like
it was like $1,000 a day.
Yes, $10,000
money.
Yep, she made like in the trivia question, she literally took the job so she could buy a new car because her car stopped working and she needed a car, and this job would pay for it.
I don't see 10 days of footage really for what she did.
I know.
And I mean
not in a disrespectful way.
Right.
Like
going off of what you said about Taso, right? The assistant.
Yeah.
He's driving the Jeep in the beginning of the film.
Yep.
He's the one who slices Andy's throat. And he's the one that, like you said, the decapitated heads, and that's where you get the joke with the hairy hands.
Yeah.
And so she wasn't in it like that much.
Right.
So
yeah. Because if you think of it, she's on set for 10
fight
days
scene's
filming.
pretty gnarly. I don't see
Yeah.
a woman over 40 doing a fight scene like she did.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's why it took so many days, because so many. Maybe she was only willing to work so many hours per evening, and that made it span out for 10 days.
Probably.
Because a lot of her footage is all at night, so you only have so many hours then until I guess everyone else in cast is
right
wanting to sleep.
And from what I'm
took a whole. a whole day of recovery was lost from that slap, I bet.
Yeah.
And then like she gets like hit in the gut, or at least play hit in the gut, and like she does a lot of different. I don't see 10 days. I'll grant you that. I'll agree with you.
Yeah, I think Adrian King got her comeuppance though. I think she really clocked her with that frying pan. That's payback.
She just pulled a Brock Lesnar punch on Braun Strowman.
Exactly.
She didn't phone it in, is what I'm saying. She might have been a figurative and literal battle axe, but
her portrayal.
She did not phone it in, which is admirable of her.
Especially since she just did it for a car. I mean, I think she did a good job. I like her portrayal. I just wish directorially, I guess, things had been different, like where she would have been more in the film in the beginning or somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, and I think
it's not murder mystery of a person that we don't meet.
Right, I think that goes off on being on the director as well as the writer. Like, I think
that's not on her.
Yeah, that's not on her. Like she was getting paid to do her job as an actor, and that's what she showed up in. She showed up on set, had to know her lines, had to know what she had to do, and she did what she had to do. And she,
she also went into like her mindset for her method, because she is a method actor, and she was talking about how like when she was younger, she did a premarital sex. Her character, I mean, like would do premarital sex, and that resulted in Jason, and then that's a huge burden on a kid, and then I don't know what the dad is, but she made this whole logic for her character about why she kills teenagers, because she was like that herself, and that's that's a professional job right there. That's
right, and I also think, and this is something she mentions in the Crystal Lake Memories documentary, is that moms brought their children to sit on her lap and get pictures with her, and she's like, "Why do you like this lady so much? She was an evil person. She was killing people." She goes, "Because her son was taken from her. Her son was murdered, pretty much murdered, because he had like these special needs, was supposed to be watched." And these camp counselors didn't give a crap, and they ended up, having sex, and the boy drowned. We understand as a mother why you were avenging your son. And she was like baffled by the response of like how they looked up to this evil, serial killer. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a mother by any means, but like, I don't know. I think
I generally look up to any woman that can hurl a dead body through a broken window. So
or hang a man from a tree.
Upside down, yes.
Or bolt a guy to a door with arrows. And he was elevated, by the way.
That one's impressive.
He was not on floor level.
Yeah,
it's not the way it looked like
she hoisted in. It was like either what's his forgetting what his name is all of a sudden.
Harry Crosby.
Yeah, Crosby's character, Bill.
Bill, yeah.
Bill had to be mid jump and then get shot with arrows, or she hoisted him up and stabbed him with arrows.
Yes, but if you look,
he really did not go into like how some of these kills were just straight up mannish,
right?
And and then the ultimate reveal, like, oh, you thought it was a dude because she's wearing hiking boots and gloves and stuff, and literally hurling bodies through a house. But it's also just this like middle-aged lady.
Well, let's go into Bill, because if you think about it, he actually had his throat slit before he was hoisted up too. So now you're talking adding in the dead body weight.
Bill's my favorite character.
Okay.
If we're doing that yet.
We'll do that at the end, yeah.
Okay. Well, Bill, I like he's Bing Crosby's son. So he really should have been beaten to death with a bag of oranges, but that's neither here nor there. But that also probably explains why he is so charming and also plays flamenco guitar, which is just delightful.
Right. He's actually, like you said about the guitar, he was actually really playing his own guitar, and was really playing the guitar. Like he was, that was his scene. Like it wasn't like any type of thing that Harry Manfredini put together or any type of musical thing. That was him playing it, and it was his own guitar, which I thought was pretty cool. But I mean, his father is a musician, so I'm sure it's no surprise as well. But I think that was pretty interesting. I still think he was a red herring as the killer when he killed that snake. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I said that earlier. I thought
Yeah.
that was kind of the point where they hanged on the camera
Yeah.
angle of him with the machete over his shoulder was to
Right.
make you think that he could have been the killer.
Yeah, I agree with that. So how about Adrian King as Alice Hardy? One
Hold
thing
on,
I will
can I-
mention is go
Real
ahead,
quick,
Yags.
I just a couple things still on Pamela Voorhees here.
Okay.
Just a couple of things in like video game related things.
Okay.
In Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, in one of the Dark Brotherhood quests, if anyone's ever played that game, you can access a basement where you can find a decapitated head in a state of decay sitting on a plate, which is called Mother's Head, as
That
a
is
reference
based.
to Pamela Voorhees.
That's awesome.
And then one other thing in the Friday the 13th game, in one of the tapes that you can hear her, it mentions her considering naming Jason Joshua, and they were actually going to name Jason Joshua. And I have this in my notes here somewhere.
Yeah, Joshua Voorhees.
Yeah, based on Miller's son. But
Nice.
he didn't want Miller's son to have the same name as a fictional maniac.
Nice.
So I found that to be pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. Here, I have actually interesting information trivia that I actually skimmed over. I don't know how I missed that on Betsy Palmer. Years before this film was actually thought of, Betsy Palmer spent her summers at a lake called Crystal Lake in Warsaw, Indiana, which I thought was kind of clever.
Yeah, it's pretty
it's
interesting.
Pretty interesting.
Well, has it been excavated? Because that might need some looking into.
I can definitely agree with that. Now, Adrian King, on the other hand, she did come back for the sequel briefly. We won't talk really about her in the sequel, but she didn't want to. She was supposed to be as the main character as well in that, but she wasn't because she had a real life stalker and had a gun to her head, and she didn't do conventions or any movie roles outside of Part 2 briefly for 20 years. She ended up having to talk the fan down from having the gun to her head, and she was like traumatized for life. She really didn't start doing anything like in the public eye for over 20 years. She moved to England and everything from what I was researching.
Yeah, I had that noted too, that she was a victim of stalking and had multiple threats on her life. And then you mentioned someone followed her all the way to London to threaten her, and the police didn't take her seriously because the police thought, oh, there's no maniac fans out there that are going to follow people around and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
Now we have a whole new movie coming out about it.
I know, right? 13. And that's another thing in my notes. Adrian King was supposed to be involved with 13 Fanboy, and she was promoted and everything by Debbie Sue Voorhees. First, she was approached for it. She declined it, but then she said, yes, I'll be in it. And then she backed out of it because of the experience of her real life stalking incident, that she felt it was just too real. I can't go down that path and have, I don't know if she has PTSD or didn't want to bring any of the bad memories or whatever up, and she couldn't do it, and she ended up dropping it, which is completely, I would say completely understandable.
Agreed.
Yeah. Also, she makes appearances at the real life Boy Scout camp when they do their tours like sometimes throughout the year, and she also owns Crystal Lake Wines, and she sells artwork. She's a real life artist just like her character, her character also minored in psychology according to the Friday the 13th wiki. And then of course that creepy romantic relationship with Steve Christie where he kind of brushed her hair and everything, that was kind of borderline. Ugh, I don't know. I looked that up. The Steve Christie in the movie it was supposed to be 30, and Adrian King was supposed to be 19.
Yeah, well, then let's talk about Steve Christie.
Yeah, let's go into Steve Christie.
He's a creeper.
Yeah, I agree.
Probably because the actor literally got the part just by hanging out on set and doing shit until someone finally casted him. Which, I mean, I want to hope that he's a good person in real life, but also that just sounds like,
when I say
it sounds like half of my friends, and then also half the creeps I know.
Yeah, when I say he's creepy, I'm not referring to the actor. I was referring to the character.
Yeah. Steve Christie the character was actually named after Steve Miner. I don't know if you knew that or not, which is quite interesting. And he also went on to have regular roles on soap operas such as Guiding Light, As the World Turns, One Life to Live, and All My Children.
I just think Steve Christie has a lot of poor judgment.
Yes, he does.
Trying to hook up with a lot younger kiddo.
Yeah. And then flirting.
and-
He was
and
flirting with
taking
that
a year's worth of
diner
time
waitress.
and money
Yeah.
into a place that has a long history of dead people.
I want to
Yep.
change my answer. That diner waitress is my favorite because that scene just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
There's some scenes that are clearly written by a guy who does soap operas for his bread and butter, because like Adrian being on a ladder while he's just pawing through her drawings, telling her that she's really good, and then that doesn't really go anywhere. It kind of sets it up for Steve Christie to be some sort of maniac murderer
Yeah.
as well. So there's a lot of red herrings if you go looking for them.
Yeah, and
They didn't.
of course,
Crazy Ralph they made him to just be the one red herring, but really he's just a delight. He's the icing on the cake in this.
Yeah.
Actually, that would have been kind of fun for me. Like Steve Christie spent a year putting this camp together, going, "Yeah, I'm gonna turn it around here. We're gonna have these kids show up in about 2 weeks." No, it was all a ploy just to get like a dozen teens in one spot, and he was just gonna kill them all.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I've been preparing for the last year. I have a dirt trap over there. I've nailed the windows shut. Pull up very much a behind the mask.
Pam's not been fucking with Steve during this whole year. He's been working on this shit for over a year.
Exactly. I mean,
Pam has done anything about
palace.
it. It's only when the teenagers shows up.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. She feels betrayed because they brought teenagers back to the campsite. She worked there as a cook, and he spent all that time to, and I mean, I think it was like $25,000 or something. It says that he spent fixing up Camp Crystal Lake to get it back with renovations and stuff. And it says in like wiki trivia that I was going through and stuff that that doesn't say it in the movie, but it was basically stating that she kind of begged him not to reopen it and stuff like that. And then he just doesn't listen to her, feels betrayed, and he does it anyways, and that's why she wants revenge.
Yeah, and another thing is that obviously, first of all, he was killed off screen, stabbed by Mrs. Voorhees with a Bowie knife in the stomach. You know that he knows the killer because of the brief interaction he has with her as well.
Yeah, there was a familiarity.
There's a familiarity, like he knew who she was, and he's wondering, why are you out here, and on Friday the 13th in a full moon in a downpour, like a rain or whatever. Like, who are you? Like, what? Like, why are you here? Like, what are you doing here? Like, he knew her.
Doesn't Pam say like, "Oh, I'm Mrs. Voorhees, an old friend of the Christies"?
Yeah, he might be
multiple.
Yeah, I think she's friends with his parents, because I remember Enos, when talking to Annie, he mentioned about how Christie's folks, I guess Christie's gonna end up like his folks, old and broke, or something like that.
Yeah, it was something predicted he would meet his parents' doom. He was murdered and was sound, and he was of sound mind and body until the last minute of life, and that's when they said he didn't meet the exact same doom, but he still met a similar doom to his parents.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. And then, of course, we mentioned about his corpse later being found dangling from a tree. And I just have a question there. And it's not really, it's more of one of those, I forget the name of the word off the top of my head, but it's like one of those questions that you don't have to answer. It's like, can Mrs. Voorhees be that strong? Like, really, like, literally lifting this dead weight after you stabbed him, dragging him all the way back to this part outside of the cabin, and then hanging him upside down from a tree with the knife still in his chest or stomach. Like, I just think that's really strong, like something that a man like Jason probably would do,
going off of that, like you're saying, is someone that actually strong to do stuff like that?
Yeah,
that's why it's a movie, because they can do whatever they want.
Exactly. So let's go into Jack Burrell, played by Kevin Bacon, probably the most notable outside of Betsy Palmer in this movie. I have a weird piece of trivia that you all might find weird. Kevin Bacon actually shaved his armpits for the sex scene when he was laying in bed, which I thought was interesting, but weird trivia. But I thought that was, I guess, kind of clever, because I mean, you're about to have sex with this girl and be shirtless on camera. I think.
Yeah, this whole scene That is not the weirdest part about that scene, Scotty.
Is it the age?
Can we talk about this scene?
Yes,
Talk
go ahead.
about how Mama Voorhees sits for like
Oh,
under a bed for about an hour,
yep,
lets him finish.
yep. Oh my God, yep.
Good
She
old
let-
Kevin
that-
Bacon gets a toke before an arrow gets pierced through his neck.
Yep, that is interesting. This is where he's got a first view shot of Jack and Marcy just going at it like a bunch of rabbits.
I don't know if she
above
got a
them.
direct shot. I mean, I think she's lying literally under the bed. Unless you're talking direct shot of like that mattress is bouncing and hitting her in the face.
That's true too. I mean, I couldn't remember if there was a mattress on it or not. I'm trying to think back when I was in Boy Scout camp when we had those like those type of beds. It was like you literally had to have a cot over it, or it was like springs. So if they didn't have like a cot or a sleeping bag or some type of thing over it, then she's literally getting like when it's bouncing up and down, their ass is going right in her face.
Yeah. So it's like, and of all the mattresses that she chose to hide under, that's the one that they start doing their
Right.
deeds on.
And the one that Ned was killed above.
Which Kevin Bacon's blind. Let's be clear. Ned was not hidden on that top bunk. His body was just draped there.
It was right, literally basically hanging over the side of the top bunk.
Yeah. He wanted to get laid and didn't care that Ned was on the top bunk.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, that's exactly what my point was. Like he was seeing something, but it wasn't Ned. It was, it was his little girl naked, his woman naked. So yeah.
It is very cute how he wanted to shave his armpits, that he was self-conscious about it.
Yeah. I think so too. And obviously his death was the most memorable in the franchise, not franchise, but in this movie.
Oh,
he's
my
killed by
favorite.
Mrs. Voorhees, obviously her being under the bed with an arrow being shoved through the throat. And the special effects for the death really didn't work. So Tazo ended up having to blow into the tubing, which caused a bubbling effect when it was squirted, and it ultimately was used for the final cut because it was more graphic.
And I mean, I have a note here somewhere.
Okay.
So Pratt, the most iconic, with the arrow through there. While brilliant, it was also incredibly complex to set up. There was hours of setup and latex building and planning, and they only had one shot to get it correct.
Yeah.
If it failed, they were done and they could not do it. And like you just said, it was saved by very quick thinking.
Yep. And I thought that was great. And of course, before we move on, Kevin, this obviously wasn't his first big break, as we previously mentioned earlier, that he was in National Lampoon's Animal House before this film, and then he starred in bigger films after this one, such as Footloose, Apollo 13, A Few Good Men, Tremors, and X-Men First Class, among many others. So I thought, obviously he did really good. Like if you think about it, I consider these the three main franchises. Everybody has differing opinions, but Friday the 13th is Kevin Bacon, Halloween is Jamie Lee Curtis, and then Nightmare on Elm Street is Johnny Depp.
I would probably agree with that.
I agree to an extent, but when most people think Nightmare on Elm Street, they don't immediately go Johnny Depp.
I do.
I'm not saying that.
I'm not going to lie either. I do.
Really? Like, I think people go Jamie Lee Curtis Halloween. She's the lead protagonist.
Right.
Like,
I'm not saying you think Johnny Depp though with the Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm just saying like they got their start in this movie. Like,
oh yeah, they definitely got their start.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
it was
think
so much so that
I think the
when
main
Johnny
reason
Depp found out about Wes Craven's New Nightmare, he was like, "Why wasn't I invited?" And Wes Craven was like, "I didn't think you'd do it. You're a big Hollywood guy." And he's like, "Nah, I would have done it."
And I think that's that's the reason I think of Johnny Depp is, I mean, that, like you said, that gave him his big break in Nightmare on Elm Street. But he's with controversy and everything going around with him right now, he's still my favorite actor. Like I love him and everything he has done.
I don't know.
I think that's why I think of him.
I think because I think of him when I think Nightmare on Elm Street, but I think that's because myself and others are more of a horror movie bubble.
Right.
I would think general population, people who are not on a horror, like listening to horror movie podcasts, like probably don't think Johnny Depp, Nightmare on Elm Street.
It's definitely, it's to this day, it is still how notable actors it's definitely still a proving ground for actors. Like,
Like Jennifer
look at the
Aniston's first
Winchester
role
brothers.
really
That one
is
guy,
Leprechaun.
one of them was in a
Yeah.
shitty horror film, and it was that was his first on-screen appearance.
Yeah.
The number of first on-screen appearance of like prolific actors nowadays that have started in horror movies is a lot.
It's a long list.
Yeah. Yep. So the next one we got is Janine Taylor as Marcy. So Marcy has a little bit of, I would say it's not really, it could be controversy. I'll get to that part in a second, but she has a little bit of confusion with her last name because in Crystal Lake Memories and in the novelization of the movie, it's confirmed that her last name is Cunningham, named after Sean. But in the movie, based on the wiki that I read, some people think that she says, but very lowly, that that when she's introducing herself to Steve Christie, "Hi, I'm Marcy Standler." What do you guys think?
I didn't notice.
Yeah, I didn't notice it until I read it on the wiki, and I went back. She does say something, but I couldn't really tell if it was Standler or not. I go by Cunningham.
Maybe if I had watched it with good subtitles, I could have caught it.
Yeah. Another thing is, this is more of a controversial thing with her. I don't remember if she was nude in the movie or not. I know they suggested it, but I think like she had her hand over her boob in the final cut because they found out she was actually 16 when they filmed, and she did originally do the nude scene, and they had to reshoot it, and that's why you see her hand over her boob in the scene, because she was underage and they couldn't show that, obviously, for legal reasons. But I thought that was interesting. You would think when you're hiring your actors, like if you're going to have them under 18, make sure that they're not doing nude scenes, or if they're doing a nude scene, make sure they're at least 18.
Yes, you should always card your nude scene people, I suppose.
I would think that would be the best thought on that. And I thought her death scene was actually very effective. She got an axe to the face in the bathroom by Mrs. Voorhees. Tom Savini was quoted as saying, when he was asking Sean about how he wanted the death to be done, do you want me to use a real axe and a fake head, or a fake axe and her real head? And he said, what do you think would be most effective? And he said, let's use a real axe and a fake head. So he ended up you don't see the axe go into the head, you see it hit the metal lamp or the metal light, which shows that it's a real axe, which makes it more effective in terms of the death, because then you see the fake head going down with the axe in it. I thought that was actually pretty effective. What do you guys think?
I like the effect of that kill. I just didn't like the kill itself.
Yeah.
I thought the character just kind of laid over it and died.
Yeah.
Like she didn't try to get away. She didn't try to run.
Right.
She just kind of went, ah!
When she's by herself in the bathroom, like quoting a movie to herself or whatever, what is that? It's like, I said, Lizzie, you'll always be plain.
I seen
and
that.
I was like, oh, that's so cute. Like, this is a cute moment. And then she's scared, and I don't know what that's referencing.
I know it's a movie. It's from a movie. I forget which movie it is off the top of my head. I seen it on IMDb, but I forget who it is off the top of my head. It was under the trivia on IMDb for the movie. I have to look that up. Let me look. I can look that up while we go to the next one. Does anybody have anything on Laurie Bartram as Brenda?
She's the Monopoly chick, right?
Yes.
I mean, first we got to say that she died way too young.
Yeah.
We'll wait, I'm confused on. It's not the Monopoly chick, right? It's Kevin Bacon's character's girlfriend.
No, that was Marcy. That was the one.
Yeah, it was Marcy.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Brenda's character. Well, Brenda goes out into the. Which Monopoly character are we talking about? There's only Adrian, and then Brenda, and then Bill.
It was Adrian, Brenda, and Bill that played Monopoly.
So we're talking about Brenda.
Yes.
Yeah, we've now moved to Brenda.
Brenda's kill is the most bullshit because she is literally a teenager not doing anything wrong. Like maybe she had a couple beers and played some poker where she didn't even really get naked, and then she went home by herself and read a book, and it just seems a very mean-spirited.
Yes, when Pamela Voorhees is going like, oh, those kids and their sex and their not watching
not
out for
paying
kids.
attention to the kid. Let me make kid noises and try to see if she actually is a human being with concern about a child and actually braves the storm and goes outside by herself to help someone. Oh, let's just kill her.
I will say that the death is really, I mean, the death is off screen. But when she's tied to the chair and thrown through the window, that's actually really cool. I really
Yeah,
like
and
that.
that was
But
actually Tom Savini in a wig.
in a wig. I have that
Yep.
written down. You just don't let me speak ever.
Shots fired.
I know. I always get it. From him.
Yeah, no, like you said, Tom Savini in a wig, and like I didn't realize that until I was going back through clips again for the podcast here, and when you actually look at it, you can tell that it's definitely not her. It's not really that good.
Yeah.
Because Tom Savini is just a little bit bigger.
Yep, and also Brenda, her death was actually supposed to be on screen, and wait to hear how this was going to happen. They actually cut it for budgetary reasons, but she was supposed to. When Ned fired the arrow at her at the archery range, that was supposed to foreshadow her being fired in the chest with an arrow from like a distance that Mrs. Voorhees, like a projectile, into her chest and through her chest and out her back.
Yeah,
like that was how she was supposed to die. And if you look at her death, closely, you can see she has a little bit of blood like up on her chin and that, and she doesn't have an arrow in her chest or anything, but you see that she has like blood on her chest. So that's probably what they did. They never filmed it though, but that was originally what's supposed to be. And going off what Yag said, she did die early, 49 years old, May 25th, 2007, from pancreatic cancer. So that's sad.
But I agree with Rowan. I think Brenda got the raw deal there.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Probably, I think of all the characters, she probably got the most raw deal.
Yeah.
Because she actually pretty much what Pamela Voorhees was looking for in a camp counselor.
Right.
In that respect. Like
Right.
Rowan mentioned.
Yep.
She didn't ignore a kid crying out for help. She actually went out into the storm, not knowing where this, in theory, kid was.
Right.
And was trying to help.
Yeah.
I think she was just kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time. Kind of situation there.
Yep. And go now, Rowan, to answer your question about Marcy in the bathroom, she was doing an impression of Katharine Hepburn with a line from her film The Rainmaker. So that's where that came from.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gotta go watch that.
So next one we have, and I know you wanted to speak something about this, Rowan, as well, is Mark Nelson as Ned Rubenstein. Before you go into that, I just want to say that Ned was originally supposed to have polio, having deformed legs and a muscular upper body.
That's true.
Yep, and his death scene was supposed to be, obviously was a throat slit off screen by Mrs. Voorhees, and his body was later seen and blood dripping and Jack, which caused his death. But what did you want to say about Ned, Rowan?
So Ned's the character of Ned, of like a sort of goofy, sort of third wheel comedic character, being in a film like this and dying is the first of that trope. Like later it'd be more solidified by Shelley, who is of course where Jason gets the mask from.
Yeah.
Also, the character who plays Ned, he had to audition in his swimsuit, which he thought was super sketch, and he almost didn't do the role. So.
I know that it's funny because if you think about it, in this one we have the jokester Ned, and in the sequel, part 2, we have the jokester Ted, which I thought was kind of clever and interesting that you got a rhyming name, and the only difference is that Ted doesn't die. But yeah, next one we have to talk about, how about Robbie Morgan as Annie Phillips? I loved her. I interviewed her. She's such a sweetheart. And I even love the character. And I'm going to be mentioning this every time it happens in a movie with the character. And she is the first of many in this franchise to actually speak to an animal. And she speaks to that dog at the gas station. There's a lot of people speaking to dogs in this movie, which I will be talking about every episode.
I know Annie was hired as the cook for the camp, and ironically that's what Pamela's job was 2 decades prior.
Yep. And also she did her own stunt when she jumped out of the car, as Robbie Morgan is a trained acrobat, and it helped her when performing the stunt. So I thought that was pretty interesting as well. And she also was only on set to film all of her scenes for 1 day, and she never even met her killer, Betsy Palmer. Even though Betsy Palmer didn't kill her, but alleged killer, because Taza was the one that did it.
I was gonna say it was Taza, yeah.
Yeah, but she never met Betsy Palmer because Taza was the one to do the scene with her.
And technically, she's the first victim in present day.
Yes, that is very true. That is a good point. And I actually want to go into a very minor character next, which is Enos, because he kind of goes back into Annie. First of all, I want to say he unfortunately passed away at the age of 79 on March 13th, the year 2000. And I also want to say, and I don't know if Rowan is a big Disney fan or not. For some reason I pegged her as a Disney fan. But he voiced the role of Sir Maurice in Beauty and the Beast.
Actually, I knew that one. I have
I
that.
did
written
not know
down.
that. I'm
Yeah.
not a huge Disney fan,
Okay,
but I
well, I
like
think you're good.
Maurice. I like Beauty and the Beast.
Okay,
he's the,
yeah,
he's the inventor guy, right?
Yeah,
He's
he's
the dad.
Belle's dad.
Yeah,
Yep,
the
Belle's
inventor
dad.
guy. Yeah.
Yep. But the scene I was talking about is that remember when he's in the truck with Annie and he's never talking to her? Like he's talking to her, like,
But they're
He's
not
talking
in the
to her,
same
but
scene.
they're doing the camera
yes,
cuts.
you know why they're doing that? Because they were never in the truck together. Taza was always was the one in the truck with each of them. He was in the truck with Enos when he was doing his lines, and he was in the truck with Robbie when she was doing her lines. And they were
Yeah.
never in the scenes together, which I thought was interesting.
Oh yeah, I mean, other movies have done that same trick.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it works.
It works. It really does. I don't know. I mean, I'm going to mention it anyways.
So who's helping Annie into the truck by pushing on her ass?
I was just gonna say that. I was just gonna say that he literally like gave me like pervert vibes when he was pushing on her ass to get her in the truck.
That was what Rowan said too. We were watching this, and she was like, "He's a perv."
Yep. Like he's like, I have this opportunity, I'm gonna take it. And this is 1979. It's not like nowadays, where you get like
you're still in the 70s.
I need to ask this question now because it is in contention. Who's the one who's shoving Annie up into the truck by her ass?
Yep.
No, that's your homework, Scotty. It's a
Yes,
quiz question for you.
I
want to know.
I have to look into that because I guarantee you I wouldn't be pushing nobody's ass to get into a truck, especially when I just met them. The next one, I really love this character. Walt Gorney is Crazy Ralph. Unfortunately, he passed away at the age of 91, March 5th, 2004. And originally his name wasn't Crazy Ralph. Does anybody know what he was supposed to originally be named?
Crazy Joshua.
Ralphie Rat Boy.
That doesn't have the same ring to it.
I know it doesn't. That's probably why they changed it. Yep, Ralphie Rat Boy was originally what his character was supposed to be named, and he had Sean Cunningham is quoted as saying that this character was only written for two purposes: to foreshadow things to come and to suspect Ralph is the killer. Which I got both of those from this character. Like I thought Ralph was
It's the closest thing to a red herring, but I don't think they did a great job making him the red.
I agree. Oh, I think we lost Chris.
There's many red herrings, like I've already discussed in this movie. This is the only not subtle.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is the red herring.
Exactly. Yeah. I completely agree.
And his name was Ralphie Rat Boy. There were too many drugs in the 70s.
Like you said, I think everyone definitely suspected him as being the killer. He's definitely the red herring. But as we said earlier, I think they should have at least shown Betsy Palmer somewhere throughout.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like we needed to see Betsy Palmer somewhere because when you first see her, you kind of think she is the killer because it's like, why is this random lady not showing up? It's like she shouldn't have just randomly shown up anywhere. You know what I mean? So going on next, Ron Carroll is Sergeant Tierney. I don't have much on him, just that he was in films such as Deep Star 6, Spring Break, House, and House 2 Second Story, The Producers, and TV shows such as Dawson Creek, Texas, The Edge of Night, and Search of Tomorrow. Does anybody else have anything on Sergeant Tierney?
The fat cop or the motorcycle cop?
The fat cop.
Yeah, there's not much to go on.
Yeah.
With him.
Yeah, the next one is Officer Dwarf. He is the one on the motorcycle. He was in films such as The Bone Garden, who I interviewed the director of that. He's actually a really cool guy, and I've seen this movie, and it's actually not bad. Torture Chamber and Satan's Playground. And this is one thing I wanted to mention. He was originally not a character in the script. He was created by Ron Kurz during rewrites, something that Victor Miller was vocally not fond of, due to the vision being that these kids are teenagers or 20-somethings, and they should be in an isolated area with no outside adult help during a murdering spree. So does anybody have anything on Motorcycle Cop Dude?
I mean, besides the trivia that you mentioned before, where he never rode a motorcycle before.
Right.
So, I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty much all you can really find about him.
Yeah.
Also, that he's also a perfectly fine red herring, in my opinion. And also the shot of him like getting on a motorcycle that I now know is supposed to be funny just does
Right.
not track and is very awkward and then should have been cut.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have Barry and Claudette, played by Willie Adams and Deborah S. Hayes. First about Barry. He unfortunately passed away at the age of 38 on May 21st, 1993. And he was also the production assistant on set. And this was the only film he's ever worked on. Of course, he was the first death in the franchise, and back in 1958, a year after Jason Voorhees was drowned. He drowned in the lake, and he was stabbed in the stomach with a Bowie knife, and was, as I mentioned earlier, supposed to be in an intense physical scene with Mrs. Voorhees severing her pinky finger, but that was cut because of budgetary reasons. And then Claudette, only film she's also done, and it's also believed that she and Barry were the ones to watch Jason the year he drowned, but they instead had sex, which is the reason why all this started happening in the first place, is because of them. Her death is strictly off camera, but believed to have her throat slashed by Mrs. Voorhees in 58, 1 year after Jason drowned. And the publicity still show the knife in her throat, but none of this was ever filmed. And Tom Savini went on record stating that he never worked on any effects for her death scene. Does anybody got anything on her?
So the opening sequence for Friday the 13th with the deaths of Barry and Claudette was originally intended to be a longer scene. Like you said, it involved Mrs. Voorhees chasing them around a barn at the camp. But they were not allowed to shoot the scene, or they couldn't shoot the scene in September 79 due to heavy snowfall. It had to be scaled down. So according to Tom Savini, these are the only omitted scenes from the final draft of the shooting script.
Okay. Interesting. That's very interesting. Then we have, I love this lady. She's such a sweet old lady. Sally Ann Golden as Sandy. Passed away on January 29th, 1982 at the age of 71. She was the waitress that was hitting on Steve, and said that that the meal is on her, but he has to take her on a night out on the town or whatever. So I thought that was interesting. And
Rest in waffles.
Huh?
It's like rest in waffles.
Exactly.
She's
and
her character is awesome. I don't know if she needs a place in this movie, but I'm happy she was there anyway.
Right. She was also the oldest cast member out of everybody that was in the movie. And she literally died like 2 years after its release, 1982. So 3 years after they filmed. And she was in films also like Alice, Sweet Alice and The Wanderers, and had a guest spot on the soap opera Ryan's Hope. And then Dorothy Cobbs is Trudy. She is the other diner waitress in the beginning when Annie is in the diner. She is the manly looking the manly looking lady with the blue apron, blonde hair. She passed away, but I couldn't find anything about a death and her age at the time and when she passed and all that. Couldn't find anything like that on her because there's not much known about her, because this is the only film she's ever done. But that's all I really have on her. And then the last one I have before we give our final thoughts on our characters and give our favorites and all that is Ari Lehman as Jason Voorhees. I have a lot of notes on him. I'll let you guys talk about him first, since I basically quickly round up the minor cast members. Does anybody have anything on Ari?
I like this band first, Jason.
Yeah.
I was going to say that too.
Yep. He also appears at the end of the tours with Adrian King at Camp Novi Bosco when they do the tours and surprise the visitors. With Adrian King, I thought that was pretty cool. Sometimes he ends up jumping out of the lake, to surprise them. And then Adrian King comes out of like one of the cabins or whatever, and that's how they surprise them, which is pretty cool. Do you have anything, Rowan, on Ari Lehman?
No.
Okay. I also have, as we mentioned earlier, he was originally supposed to be played by Jason was supposed to be played by Noel Cunningham, but his mom wouldn't let him do it. And then Tom Savini did the makeup effects for Jason to make him look deformed. The jump scare where he jumped out of the water, obviously, as we mentioned, was a copy off of Carrie. And then our final thoughts. So I'm going to go last. So I'll let Chris go first. So let us know who your most favorite, your least favorite character is, who you think the most evil or hated is, and who would you like to hang out with the most, and who do you wish survived?
I thought those were all different categories. Is that all one now?
We're just gonna out of all the characters in the movie, we're just gonna say which ones are our most favorite, our least favorite, our most evil or hated character, And
Okay.
yeah.
If I miss one, please make sure I get it
Yeah.
then. Favorite character, I guess Annie. She was very hopeful. Brenda was close too, but yeah. Most hated, Ned. I just found him annoying. What were the others?
Least favorite?
Ned.
Ned. Character you want to hang out with the most? Who would you like to hang out with the most?
Honestly, Steve Christie.
Okay. And who do you wish survived?
Annie.
Annie. What about you, Rowan?
Well, I don't know why Chris wants to hang out with Steve Christie.
Because I want to ask him, what in the hell were you thinking? You're like, why did you put this money back in this camp? There's all this blood, all this bad shit. Like, I'm
He's
not gonna hang
thirsty
out
for
with them all.
teens. Next question. Anyway, I got so are we on me now?
Yes.
Okay. My favorite character is Bill because he plays flamenco guitar and is not a sex pest, which are all good qualities in a teenager. I'd probably date Bill. He seems very charming. I'd also like to hang out with Brenda because Brenda had the idea for strip monopoly.
That
And
sounds
also
cool.
she just seems very like capable and cool. Like I would be friends with her. Least favorite characters, probably Steve Christie, because I just don't get what he is. And he also seems kind of like gross. Fucks teenagers. Anyway. And or at least wants to. And that's not appropriate. Don't know. Did that answer all the questions? I'm not
Most
sure.
evil or hate it?
Most evil. Well, fucking Pam, obviously, but
Yeah.
like, it's mostly because like she kills people who are like mostly minding their own business. Like maybe Ned was jerking off in that bed, but probably still he was also minding his own business.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just a very strange set mindset of someone who like wants to kill someone who genuinely seems like they like to be around children or is explicitly going out to aid somebody for help. So
Right.
Yeah, that's similar to Annie. Like, she's like all about wanting to work with kids and be with kids.
Yeah.
And she gives that monologue to Pamela, and Pamela still's like, nah, you gotta go.
yeah, I'm very interested in what Pam can bench press, but other than that, I would not want to hang out with her at all. And I would just take her exercise regimen and then like that, leave it at that.
I agree. And what about a character you wish to survived?
I mean, honestly, the 50s kid should have survived. Everybody should have survived.
Yeah.
Brenda most of all, because I didn't really know how she died. She just got thrown in
Yeah.
through a thing, like tied to some things. That really confused me. Like,
Yeah,
I think if I had to pick one person, it would be Brenda, because it wasn't even good. Because like she
Yeah.
has rope all over her, and I don't understand where the rope even came from. She
Yeah, I
got
think if they kept the
got
original
got in an archery field. Like it just makes no sense. And so I think Brenda would be the one I would bring back.
Yeah, I think that if they were gonna keep Brenda's death in the original way, like getting shot with an arrow, that would have been good. Because even if she got shot with an arrow, where the hell did the rope come from?
From the pulley system Pamela Voorhees needed to get her in the window.
Yeah, like she
Yeah, she had
literally,
a winch and like some other things.
yeah, because she definitely didn't have her tied up or anything, or arms tied once she went through the window. It was like randomly just around like her neck and body, like very loose, and it was just that was it, and she's through the window. So what about you, Yags?
So favorite, I would probably have to say Brenda. just because she's like we've mentioned the whole time, she's down to earth. She didn't have an actual reason to get killed. She's doing
Right.
what she was supposed to be doing. But another like runner up, I gotta give it to Pam Voorhees. You know, I mean Betsy Palmer in general literally only did the movie because she needed a car.
Yeah.
So I mean I can respect that. Least favorite, I Rowan, don't hate me on this one, but it's Bill Brown. And the reason I'm going with him is he kills the snake. It's like instead of being like
I thought Ned kills it.
No, it's Bill.
no, it's Bill. Yeah.
I thought
so,
it was
like,
Ned too.
No, we judges.
I don't know. I thought it was Ned that
Bill.
killed the snake.
It was Bill. Yeah, Bill had the machete and he gave the blank stare. Ned made a joke about it, and so did Marcy.
Fuck. All right.
All right.
Marcy
got
said
me
at
there,
least you know what's
Scott.
going for dinner.
that's why I'm going with Bill. Just because I mean he could have, yeah, it's a snake, but it's not a poisonous snake. He could have picked it up and put it outside.
No argument. No,
That's why I'm
honestly,
going with
I
Bill.
didn't even realize, Yags, that I
Well,
swore.
maybe
it
it was some
Ned.
of that level of peer pressure because Alice was screaming at him, "Kill it, kill it!"
Yeah.
No, but that would have still colored my answer if I had realized that, but I didn't. So I totally respect that. Yags.
Most evil or hate it. I gotta go with Barry and Claudette. They left Jason drowned. None of this would have happened if they would have done what they were supposed to do.
I don't know if I would say evil.
Hate it. I still
Hate
hate
it.
it.
I
Hate
put
it.
it into like two separate categories, either evil or hate it. Because if you say just evil, it's always going to be the killer, Jason, Mrs. Voorhees, Jason, Mrs. Voorhees. So like if we get to part 7, it could be, for example, Melissa or Dr. Cruz or
Yeah, so that's why I'm going with hate it, because like I said, you don't have a series without those two idiots.
Yeah.
No, but that's a good point because they are very, very chill for people who have only a year before personally known to be responsible for a child being killed.
Yeah.
Character you'd hang out with, I gotta go Crazy Ralph. I'd love to hang out with Crazy. He probably has some really awesome stories to tell.
He gets drunk on Saturday nights.
I'm telling you, he seems like he'd be one of those guys you just, like you said, sit down and drink with him, and he'd tell you some stuff. Like
He does have a cool bicycle. He's got that bicycle for DUIs.
You're right. He does got the cool bicycle.
He gets drunk on a Saturday night and then spends a few nights in jail, a weekend in jail.
and then to finish it off, character I wish survived. You got to go with Jack, man. Kevin Bacon.
Yeah,
I love him. He died a really cool death in the series. I mean, it was very gory and very cool special effects. But I think his character could have had a little bit more potential of doing a little bit more if he wouldn't have been killed off.
Yeah, I agree. For me, I got most favorite would be Crazy Ralph. I freaking love that guy. I just love it. It's got a death curse. I just love that guy so much. Least favorite, Steve Christie. I mean, pervert. I mean, I wouldn't say Enos because I don't know much about him. All I know is he loves to grab adorable girl's ass, while she's getting in a truck. But at least he's helping her into a truck, I guess.
I don't think Steve Christie helps with that.
No, I think that's.
But he is a creep, though.
Yeah, I think Steve is a creep. I said that. I would have said Enos as a pervert as well, but I don't see him as much of a. I don't know much more about him to know that. I just know that he's helping her into a truck by touching her ass. But so Steve gets the cake on that. Evil or hate it, I would say Mrs. Voorhees just because she's the most evil. If it was in terms of hate it, I had listed Barry and Claudette like Yags. Like they started this whole thing. Like if they just freaking kept their hormones in check and their pants on and she kept her legs crossed and he kept his snake in his cage, then we wouldn't have had a dead boy and we wouldn't have all these murders that lasted 12 movies. Unless Jason was an actual psychopath when he grew up. But either way, like I think he started killing because his mom was dead. Who would I like to hang out with the most? Chris is gonna hate this, but Ned Rubenstein. I think he would actually be fun and funny to hang out with. I think he'd be pretty cool. Like I don't know, like I just think he's a jokester and I like that type of personality. I thought he was pretty cool.
Each their own. I mean, I love Shelley. I'd hang out with Shelley.
Yeah.
I found Ned annoying.
Yep. And who I wish survived, Annie. I mean, Brenda was a very close second, but Annie, because she was just so adorable. She loved kids. She couldn't wait to cook for the kids. You know, she couldn't wait to cook at camp. She had so many dreams, hopes and dreams that she wanted to do. And the fact that she died so early and young, I thought was a shame. Thought when her body was revealed, though, that was pretty cool because, but it was like weird because like Mrs. Voorhees was driving around in this freaking Jeep the whole time with her corpse literally like there. It was like kind of creepy, but yeah. So that is all for cast chat. We have a couple more categories to go. The next one we have is, oh my God.
Hi, I'm Sarah Cartwright, and if you're a movie buff just like me, then you should check out my podcast, A Feature Like This. It's a movie review podcast filled with fun movie facts, true affection and reaction from the reviewers, and so much more. A Feature Like This is available on major podcast platforms. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at A Feature Like This. Until then, a farewell adieu.
All right, category 5 is oh my God. So I'm gonna give a list of the death scenes that really happened, and we just got to pick our top 3. Actually, we could just pick our top 3 at this point. So I'll just go first. My top 3 really are just Jack, Mrs. Voorhees, and Marcy. I just think those are really good. Jack with the arrow is obviously a no-brainer. I love Mrs. Voorhees' decapitation, and Marcy's just the way that they showed that it was real acts. I thought was very effective. What do you got, Chris?
For me, it's kind of a lot of the deaths are off screen, so it's hard to really compare for like an actual the effects piece. Like some of them look cool, but I like seeing the death in action, I suppose. So I guess
like how you see Bill on the door, but you don't see him die.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I find that kind of like
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go Annie, Pamela, and Bacon.
Cool. What about you, Rowan?
I don't know. I'll probably go with the same thing. I don't really rate deaths
right
super much. I get way too much into the plot. And so if there's like a thing that like doesn't make sense to me, I just get so caught up with that. So I think I'm gonna go lean with what you said, like with Jack first and then Pam second and put anyone else in third.
So what about you, Yags? Who are your top deaths?
Let's see. Number 3, I'd probably have to go with Marcy getting axe in the face. I think it's just like we said before, when you hear the axe hitting,
yeah,
I think that just sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, probably Pamela getting her head cleaned right off. That was a good one too. I mean, we talked about like the hands flailing everywhere. That obviously wouldn't have happened, but I think that's a cool, very visual scene. And then number 1, it's got to be Jack, Kevin Bacon with the arrow through the neck. I think they just did a fantastic job with that.
Absolutely. So let's go into our next category of Killer's Corner.
Did you know that a young boy drowned the year before those 2 others were killed? The counselors weren't paying any attention. They were making love while that young boy drowned. His name was Jason. You see, Jason was my son, and today is his birthday.
I guess this one we're just going to be talking about pretty much Pamela, like the killer, what they look like unmasked, their special effects, all that different stuff about the killer. Obviously, Mrs. Voorhees didn't really have any special effects. There was no mask. There was no real reveal. Like she's a normal, middle-aged lady. So I guess, what do you guys think of Mrs. Voorhees' look? Do you think she looked like she could have been a menacing killer when you first saw her?
No. And I also don't think how she was like we've been saying this whole time, Where did she get the superhuman strength to do half these things?
Right.
Pulley system, my friend. Pulley system.
True. Okay. That makes sense.
She had a whole spin of rope in that truck.
You know what, though? I have helped someone string up a deer to gut it onto a tree, and it takes more than just one person to put, and that deer weighs less than a normal human, and it takes more than one person to do that. So
how much does the average deer weigh?
I think this one was like, it might have been like 140, 150 pounds.
Okay, because I was gonna say the girls weren't that heavy.
No, but Steve, come on.
Maybe they're 140. But
we're gonna say Steve Christie had to be more than 150 pounds.
I would agree with that.
And
That's why I was wondering what the weight of the deer you're talking about.
And he's the one that was hung upside down. So
yeah,
this whole part just makes me wonder what she was serving at camp. Like, she'd go out and freaking bring down a deer and drag it into the cafeteria and serve it. She's really good at this. She's good at stringing people up, and she has really good aim. She's got a Bowie knife on her at all times.
So she knew the camp was coming back. She was doing CrossFit for the last year in preparation.
Yeah, she must have really cooked that venison and everything.
Thinking Bear Grylls.
I agree. Yeah, I think that she just looked normal to me. She wasn't like a Jason Voorhees. Obviously Jason became a normal human, and then he turned into a superhuman, undead specimen. But I mean, that's pretty much all I got on her. Just that she's a sweet, nice little old lady. So in terms of if we never saw this film before, we never saw any sequels, do you think Mrs. Voorhees is dead? Yes or no?
Yes.
No.
Rowan?
You're asking me, do I think
If
she comes back?
if this is the first time you've seen this movie and you never saw any sequels before, do you leave this movie at the very end thinking she's dead, or do you think like they're gonna make a sequel and she's coming back headless, basically, or with a new head?
This is why that ending sucks, where there's like a Phantom boy you could kill. Like I want to say no, she's not coming back. She's been beheaded, but also you throw in that ending where there's just like a weird drowning boy.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's hard. I probably would have thought that she was dead and that was just a bad ending.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be my answer.
Yeah. What about you, Yags? What were you gonna say?
I was being sarcastic before. I do think she's dead. I mean, her head got clean chalked right off.
Exactly, I agree too. I don't see this as a Michael Myers situation where he's decapitated and then he literally just switched places with a paramedic. I mean, she's clearly gone. She's not wearing no mask. She's done.
And that wasn't the plan in that film, anyways.
Yes,
that was supposed to be Michael dead, and then
that was.
Never mind. We're sorry. We're sorry.
We're gonna retcon that and come up with a not so clever way to describe it.
Yeah, that was horrible.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, I think the movie's done. There's nothing else. I mean, it makes me think, yeah, it's over. She's dead.
Yeah, I completely agree. Let's go to give our final thoughts when we here at To the Movies go to our end credits.
This is Greg Gilbert, host of Python's Paradise. Yes, folks, I have interviewed so many people here on the show, from Tommy Wiseau to Ralph Bakshi to Dick Miller. I've also had Caroline Monroe, Linnea Quigley, Nancy Allen. I've had musicians like 3 of the Blues Brothers bands, and others like Tony Basil, Tiffany, and many others. And if you like to reflect onto the past, I do tribute interviews as well, with loved ones coming on to talk about their relationships with Alfred Hitchcock, Audrey Hepburn, Rowdy Roddy Piper, and the late Zoe Tamerlis Lund of Miss 45. Yes, folks, if you want to hear about cult films from the past and present, tune into Python's Paradise, and we'll give you the latest. And we'll put the squeeze on. Tune in.
What is it? What aren't you telling me?
I'm gonna leave. You can find your own way back.
I'm just a lousy doctor. You're a fucking coward.
Give me
So we are at the end here of To the Movies. Let's give some rankings. So I guess for me, I love the film. I do love the film. Like it was I really enjoyed this film. But when I rewatched it the other day from a critical eye instead of a fan's eye, I kind of have to admit that this film is more boring than I ever realized. I mean, I didn't realize it took Alice that long to make coffee.
Yeah, that's a long coffee scene.
That was a long coffee scene, and it got real boring real fast. Like
At least that one had tension in it. There's other scenes that just don't have any tension, and it's just driving shots.
Yeah, like Steve Christie returning to the cabins after the diner, Crazy Ralph riding his bike, the cop motorcycle where he does the drive, turn, and drive away, Bill lighting the lantern, and Alice making the coffee are all really dragged shots.
Yeah, like they could have easily been cut in post-production, you know. I mean, if they needed something like to make a certain time spot or whatever for the length of the film, they should have just kind of left it there, you know what I mean? Like they could have reshot something or something, you know, do something else, but like they are really long shots. But the deaths overall I thought were very inventive, but I mean, let's face it, a lot of them were also done off screen. And I mean, I have a list of the ones that are off screen: Bill, Brendan, Ned, Steve, Claudette. I mean, you have good kills like Jack and Annie, but I mean, you want to see all the death scenes. Like, granted, you still see Steve's death. I mean, it's still below the camera. Marcy's was effective because of it being a real axe, but you don't see it going to her skull, so kind of cheapened to death as well, because you don't really get the impact. You just get the, you know, you don't see the blow. You get the impact of what the knife sounds like. I mean, the axe sounds like. Overall, I rank it out of a 5 hockey masks. I give it a 3. What about you, Chris?
Like 2.5, maybe. 2, somewhere in that category. I'd still recommend to watch this movie, even though I didn't like it as much as I would have hoped to. I think even though it likes to mimic a lot of Halloween, and for me, the killer not being available as a person you think of when you're looking into the mystery until the very end, which makes it not really a mystery killer. I do think it is cool. It does kind of flip the script on the killer not being a dude.
Yeah.
I thought that is, especially probably for the time when this came out, 1980. No one had that. Anyone sitting in the audience, I bet, wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah.
So that can still be that twist that I'm probably missing out on.
Yeah.
Being many, many years removed from this film being out and looking at it from a critical eye. But if looking at it from an audience perspective and that being surprised that it is a female, let alone a mother, being the killer, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Look at all the people
that. And then they never did it again.
Right.
Now, urban legends, they did it there, but it's very awkward.
But look at how we end up picking all of the people that were red herrings. They were all males, but the ultimate killer was a female too. So that brings back Chris's point.
Yeah.
Like, it's really interesting that all the people that we thought were the killer, we thought Ralph or Officer Dorff or Bill, but it really was Mrs. Voorhees, a woman. Even though we never seen it before, it was still a woman that was the killer, not a man. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
This is actually in a book with the best title in the world. It's called Women, Men, and Chainsaws.
Nice.
And she cited this movie as one of the biggest, most profound, and that's again why it's so weird. It may be a little bit disappointing why it suddenly turned into a Jason franchise.
Right.
I understand why it went that way, but it's just good. This film stands by itself.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Yeah. Now, Victor Miller wanted it, if it were to continue, he wanted it to be Pamela Voorhees doing all this stuff. He didn't like the Jason add-on.
Yeah.
And I think I would have had more. I like Jason. I like what they did with the sequels, but I would have been interested in seeing a different universe's version of Pamela doing her thing.
I think that would have been cool too.
Which I would have probably not as held the poor reveal as badly if there had been more films with Pamela Voorhees.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. Yeah, what about you, Rowan?
I don't think it's as low as 2.5. It's more like a 3.
Yeah.
But it is pretty cool. Like how, for all of its flaws, like even when it drags, the cinematography is great.
Yeah.
The kills, very good. The acting, very like organic and flows very well from everybody involved. Very ambitious, and I like it. And I like how they did the ultimate trope, like where there's like leather gloves, black boots. Okay, it's some creepy dude. Oh wait, it's actually somebody's mom, and that's great. And we talk more about like what her core strength is, and we're very like still like Vader to be like, fuck those teenagers for being teenagers and irresponsible. We're still on her side. Like fuck. And I think that's just really interesting, because that's basically what the horror film is about how, you know, actually we're more on Pam's side. We're more on the killer's side, and more like just weirded out about her core strength than we are about the teenagers actually dying.
Yeah, I'm not on Pam's side throughout this. It's like,
yeah.
Well, it can. That's where the discussion ultimately is. Still. So
what about you, Yags? What do you think about the movie? Any final thoughts, and what's your rating out of Hockey Masks?
Like everyone's saying, going back and rewatching it again, you can definitely. I mean, I have it. It's been quite a few years since I rewatched it. So going back and watching it again, it's definitely cheesier than I remember, because I like you said, you weren't watching it as like a fan, you're watching it to critique it. So definitely it definitely lost some of the muster that it once had. But I would like, for all that it's worth though, I'd still have to give it 3 hockey masks.
Yeah, I mean, originally, if I was watching it just for fun, I probably would have given it 4.5, just because I do enjoy it. But critiquing it for its flaws and for the writing and the deaths and the things that you go into, that this podcast is going into, like the power strength and the superhuman, and like all, like, you know, Mrs. Voorhees just showing up at the end. Like, these are things you don't think of when you're watching it for entertainment, but you really think of it when you're really trying to critique it, or if you're familiar with, you know, how filmmaking should be. Like, you don't really look at it any other way unless you're critiquing it. That's the way. I mean, when I really critiqued it, that made me decide that, wow, this movie isn't as good as I really enjoy it to be when I'm looking at it from a filmmaker standpoint. So but that's all we got here. Before I let everybody go, we close you out, just to let everybody know, if you are watching this, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Castbox, OpenBox, Listen Notes, Verbal, or any other podcasting platform, please subscribe to us, comment, rate us, you know, do whatever you can to make us more known. This is our very first episode, so there's plenty to go. There might have been some hiccups. We will be working out any kinks that we have, especially if this goes on a little longer than we planned, but we will be working out any kinks that we have for future episodes. This is our really our trial run. Also, email us at tothemoviesreview@gmail.com if you have any questions, if you want to comment on this episode or any future episodes and want to discuss what we should cover in the future, any franchises or films or whatever. You can also follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tothemoviespodcast. Also on Twitter at twitter.com/tothemovies1, and on Instagram the username is _the_movies_podcast. And I thank you, Chris and Rowan, for joining me on this very first episode of us hosting To the Movies. And a very special thank you to Scott Yagielniskie, aka Yags, for being our very first guest co-host for To the Movies. I'm glad. I hope you guys had a great time, and we actually learned a lot discussing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks to all the listeners that have joined us in listening to our very first episode on the 1980 Friday the 13th film. We will be filming episodes every 2 weeks unless something comes up, like in our personal lives, that we are unable to film it. We'll keep everybody updated on our social media pages as well. So stay tuned to that and give us a like, follow, whatever you can do. And we thank you guys for joining us. And we hope we're glad that you can join us here at To the Movies.